Welcome to the History for Sleep Hub. Before we dive into today's incredible journey, I want to connect with you. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. And here's something important. Is my voice okay for you? Do you want me to speak faster, slower, or is this pace just right? Your feedback helps me create better content for you. Now, let's begin this amazing story about one of humanity's greatest mysteries. For over 4,500 years, they have stood as monuments to human ambition. The Pyramids of Giza, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and the only one still standing. But how did ancient Egyptians, without modern machinery, without wheels, without iron tools, construct these colossal structures? Tonight, we uncover the truth behind one of humanity's greatest achievements. This isn't just a story about stones and construction. It's a story about human determination, ingenuity, and the power of organized civilization reaching heights that seem impossible even by today's standards. Imagine this. Each limestone block weighs between 2 and 15 tons. That's the weight of 2 to 7 cars. The Great Pyramid alone contains approximately 2.3 million of these blocks. It stood 481 feet tall, making it the tallest man-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. The precision is mind-boggling. The base is leveled to within just 1 inch across 755 feet. Think about trying to create something that level in your own backyard. Now multiply that challenge by thousands. The sheer mathematics of it boggle the mind. If you stacked all the stone from the Great Pyramid, you could build a wall 1 foot wide and 10 feet tall that would stretch from New York to Los Angeles. That's how much material we're talking about. The Great Pyramid is aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. The error, just 3/60ths of a single degree. To put that in perspective, modern architects using GPS and laser technology would struggle to achieve such accuracy. How did Bronze Age people accomplish this? They didn't have compasses. They didn't have satellite technology. They didn't have laser levels. Yet somehow, using nothing but the stars, simple tools, and brilliant mathematical understanding, they achieved what seems impossible. Each side of the pyramid faces almost exactly north, south, east, and west. The precision suggests they understood celestial mechanics at a level that wouldn't be matched for thousands of years. Aliens built them. Slaves were whipped to death constructing them. They possessed lost ancient technology. Atlanteans shared their secrets. The pyramids were power plants. They were grain silos. These myths have persisted for decades, spread by pseudoscience and sensational documentaries. But archaeology, engineering analysis, and hieroglyphic records tell us a completely different story, one that's actually more impressive than any alien theory. The truth is, we don't need aliens to explain the pyramids. What we need is to understand the true capabilities of ancient Egyptian civilization, a society that lasted over 3,000 years, that developed sophisticated mathematics, that organized labor on scales not seen again until the Industrial Revolution. Now we're going to this important scene. The pyramids were not built by slaves. This is one of the most persistent myths, popularized by ancient Greek historians who visited Egypt thousands of years after the pyramids were built, and by Hollywood movies that needed dramatic tension. They were constructed by paid laborers, skilled craftsmen, seasonal workers, and dedicated teams who took immense pride in their work. We know this from workers' villages discovered near the pyramids, from bread ration records, from medical care facilities, and even from graffiti left by work gangs boasting about their contributions. These weren't oppressed slaves. They were Egyptian citizens, many of them farmers who worked on the pyramids during the Nile's flood season when their fields were underwater and they couldn't farm. The Great Pyramid was built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, around 2580 to 2560 BC. That's over 4,500 years ago, during what Egyptologists call the Old Kingdom, specifically the Fourth Dynasty. It took approximately 20 years to complete. Think about that. 20 years of continuous construction. If they worked year-round, they would have had to set one block in place every 2.5 minutes, working 10 hours a day. That's the pace required. One block every 150 seconds for 20 years straight. The logistics of maintaining that pace are staggering. It means quarrying, transporting, and placing approximately 800 tons of stone every single day. For perspective, that's like building a modern skyscraper, except with Bronze Age technology. We're going to focus primarily on the 3 Great Pyramids at Giza, though Egypt has over 130 pyramids total. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, the largest, originally stood 481 feet tall and contained about 2.3 million stone blocks. The Pyramid of Khafra, built by Khufu's son, which appears taller in photographs because it sits on elevated ground and still retains some of its smooth limestone casing at the apex. And the Pyramid of Menkaure, built by Khafra's successor, the smallest of the 3, but still massive by any standard at 213 feet tall. Each tells us something unique about ancient Egyptian engineering and ambition. Together, they represent the pinnacle of pyramid construction. Earlier pyramids were experiments, later ones were smaller and less grand. These 3 at Giza represent the moment when everything came together perfectly. Over the next 3 hours, we'll journey through every aspect of pyramid construction. We'll explore the quarries where the stone was cut, watching as workers wielding copper chisels and wooden mallets carved through solid bedrock. We'll follow the transportation routes across the desert and up the Nile, understanding how they moved stones weighing as much as 50 tons without wheels or pulleys. We'll examine the ramps, the mysterious construction ramps that somehow allowed workers to raise millions of blocks hundreds of feet into the air. We'll look at the tools, simple by our standards, but incredibly effective in skilled hands. We'll examine the mathematical precision that allowed them to create perfect right angles and align with the stars. We'll meet the workers, understand their lives, see their villages, read their graffiti, and learn about the food they ate and the medical care they received. We'll understand how they organized such a monumental project, coordinating tens of thousands of people across multiple sites. This is the complete story, based on decades of archaeological research, engineering analysis, and scientific investigation. So settle in, relax, and prepare to travel back over 4 millennia. We're about to witness one of the greatest construction projects in human history. The mystery of the pyramids isn't about aliens or lost technology. It's about human ingenuity, determination, and the power of organized civilization. It's about a society that valued permanence and believed their pharaohs were living gods who deserved monuments that would last forever. It's about mathematical precision achieved through careful observation and brilliant problem solving. It's about logistics and organization on a scale that wouldn't be matched until ancient Rome. It's about skilled workers who took pride in their craft and left their marks for us to discover 4,500 years later. The pyramids stand as a testament to what humans can achieve when vision, resources, and determination align. Let's begin this journey together and discover exactly how they did it. Every pyramid began with a pharaoh's decision, and that decision was about far more than vanity. When Khufu ascended to the throne around 2589 BC, he inherited a tradition that was already centuries old. His father, Sneferu, had built 3 pyramids, experimenting with design and learning from costly mistakes. The bent pyramid at Dashur shows where Sneferu's engineers had to change the angle mid-construction when they realized it was too steep and unstable. The Red Pyramid, also built by Sneferu, was the first successful true smooth-sided pyramid. Khufu studied these attempts. He watched his father's engineers struggle and succeed. Now he wanted something greater. He envisioned a pyramid so massive, so perfect, that it would dominate the desert for eternity. In ancient Egyptian belief, the pharaoh was a living god. His pyramid wasn't just a tomb. It was a machine for resurrection, a place where his life force would reside eternally, and from which his spirit would ascend to join the gods among the stars. Now, let's talk about the crucial choice of location. The Giza Plateau wasn't picked randomly just because it had a nice view. The location was everything for a successful pyramid, and the site had to meet multiple critical criteria. First, it needed to be on the west bank of the Nile. The west represented the realm of the dead in Egyptian belief, where the sun sets before being reborn. Second, the site required solid bedrock foundation to support millions of tons of stone. Sand or soft ground would never work. Third, it needed to be close to the Nile for transporting materials, yet high enough to be safe from the annual summer floods. Fourth, there needed to be good quality limestone nearby. Transporting every single block from distant quarries would be impractical. Giza checked every single box. The limestone bedrock here was perfect, strong enough to support enormous weight, yet workable. It was a commanding position, visible for miles. So who was the man behind the plan? Meet Hemiunu, Khufu's vizier and the likely architect of the Great Pyramid. In ancient Egypt, the vizier was the second most powerful person in the kingdom, like a prime minister. But Hemiunu wasn't just an administrator. He was a master engineer who understood mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and logistics. His tomb near the pyramid depicts him as a robust man with keen intelligence. He would have overseen every calculation, every decision, coordinating thousands of workers. He would have conducted the astronomical observations for alignment. He calculated the angles and proportions. He was essentially the project manager for the largest construction project humanity had ever attempted. The stress must have been enormous. One mistake could have resulted in structural failure, yet he succeeded brilliantly. The ancient Egyptians were mathematical masters. They used a measurement system based on the royal cubit, about 20.6 inches or 52.4 centimeters, measured from the elbow to the fingertip. The Great Pyramid's base is 440 royal cubits on each side. But here's what's truly remarkable. They achieved a near-perfect square. The difference between the longest and shortest sides is just 4.4 centimeters across 230 meters. That's 99.98% accurate. Let me repeat that. 99.98% accurate, using ropes and wooden measuring rods. Their accuracy rivals modern construction. The right angles at each corner are also nearly perfect. Creating one perfect right angle is one thing. Creating four of them, each 230 meters long, all meeting perfectly, is simply extraordinary. So, how did they pull this off? Let's look at their surveying methods. Egyptian surveyors used simple but incredibly effective tools. The merkit was a basic sighting instrument, essentially a bar with a plumb line. By aligning two of them, they could establish a perfectly straight line. They also used a notched palm rib, the bay, for sighting stars. To establish true north, they observed stars circling the celestial North Pole. In their era, there was no single pole star like our Polaris. Instead, they tracked circumpolar stars throughout the night, noted where they rose and set, and calculated the midpoint, which gave them true north. This required hours of careful observation. They stretched ropes soaked in water and coated with beeswax to create perfectly straight measuring lines. The water stretched the ropes uniformly, and the beeswax made them stiff. These simple techniques, applied with patience and skill, achieved results that still seem almost impossible today. Creating a level foundation was perhaps the most critical step. If the foundation isn't level, the entire structure will be skewed and could become unstable. The engineers carved channels into the bedrock and filled them with water. Water always finds its own level. You can't argue with physics. They marked the waterline all along the channels, then drained the water and carved the bedrock down to precisely those marks. The result? The base of the Great Pyramid is level to within 2.1 centimeters, less than an inch, across the entire 15-acre platform. This was near perfect flatness, achieved without laser levels or modern equipment. They also cleverly left a natural hill of bedrock in the center and built around it. This saved time and materials while adding to the foundation's stability. The pyramid's shape itself was deeply symbolic and mathematically significant. The angle of the Great Pyramid's sides is 51.8 degrees, and this wasn't arbitrary. This specific angle creates a fascinating ratio between the pyramid's height and its base perimeter that closely approximates pi. The ratio of twice the base length to the height is 3.1/16, which is pi to 4 decimal places. Whether this was intentional or just a result of their construction methods, it shows a sophisticated geometric understanding. The pyramid shape was also the most structurally stable form for reaching maximum height. It distributes weight efficiently, with maximum mass at the base. It's pure compression from top to bottom, which stone handles beautifully. It's a shape that represents structural optimization, one we see in nature itself. Inside, the pyramid needed chambers and passageways for the pharaoh's burial. The king's chamber, the grand gallery, and the queen's chamber weren't carved out later. They were integrated into the design from the very beginning. This created enormous engineering challenges. The architects had to ensure millions of tons of stone wouldn't crush these hollow spaces. Above the king's chamber, they built 5 relieving chambers, empty spaces stacked on top of each other with massive granite beams. The uppermost chamber has a pointed roof made of limestone blocks, angled to direct weight away from the king's chamber below. This brilliant weight-relieving system redirects the incredible pressure to the massive walls surrounding the chamber. Without it, the chamber would have collapsed thousands of years ago. Building a pyramid required more than just plans. It demanded unprecedented logistics. Hemiunu needed to organize around 20,000 to 30,000 workers at its peak. This wasn't just laborers hauling stones. It was a complex organization with specialized divisions: quarrymen, stonemasons, surveyors, engineers, carpenters, rope makers, and coppersmiths. Then you needed support personnel: bakers, brewers, cooks, water carriers, and medical staff. Each group needed coordination, housing, food, and tools. The workforce was likely organized into gangs, overseen by foremen who reported to supervisors, all the way up to Hemiunu. The communication system had to be flawless to track how much stone was being quarried, transported, and set in place, all while maintaining a relentless pace. Finally, let's look at the master timeline. The project was likely broken into distinct phases. Years 1 to 3 were probably for site preparation, leveling the foundation, establishing quarries, building the workers' village, and creating roads and ramps. This preparatory phase was crucial. Years 4 through 17 focused on constructing the main pyramid body, level by level. As each level was completed, the ramps had to be extended. This meant placing hundreds of blocks every single day for years. Years 18 through 20 were for finishing touches, placing the capstone, applying the smooth outer casing stones from top to bottom, and building the surrounding temples. The plan had to account for everything: the annual Nile flood, religious festivals, tool wear, worker rotation, and food production. It was a masterclass in project management that still boggles the mind. Let's travel back in time to where it all began, the quarries. The vast majority of the Great Pyramid's limestone blocks came from right here on the Giza Plateau itself. Look around, you can still see these massive excavations like enormous bites taken out of the landscape. The ancient workers literally carved away the plateau, transforming solid bedrock into the building blocks of eternity. These quarries, located southeast of the pyramids, were once the natural terrain. The local Giza limestone was actually quite soft when first quarried. Now that might sound like a bad thing, but it was a huge advantage. Freshly cut limestone contains moisture, making it much easier to shape. The Egyptians called it green stone, not for its color but because it was fresh. Once exposed to the air, the stone would harden. This meant workers could carve the blocks with relative ease and let them cure into a rock-hard state after they were put in place. This local limestone formed the immense core of the pyramid, the millions of blocks hidden from sight, where perfect precision wasn't the top priority, allowing for much faster work. So, how did they cut multi-ton blocks from solid rock without steel or modern machinery? The answer is ingenious: copper tools and sand. Yes, copper, a metal much softer than limestone. It seems impossible, right? But the secret was the abrasive, quartz sand, which is harder than limestone. Workers would sprinkle sand into a cutting groove and then use a copper saw to grind it back and forth. It was the hard sand particles that did the actual cutting, slowly pulverizing the stone. It was painstaking, tedious work that required immense patience and a steady rhythm. Teams of workers would take turns, their copper tools wearing down quickly against the abrasive sand. Tool-making and repair was a constant, essential part of the process, and archaeologists have found extensive evidence of copper workshops right near the construction sites. Let's look closer at the cutting process. First, workers would survey the quarry face, looking for natural layers and cracks in the rock. Working with the stone's natural grain, not against it, was key. They'd then carve narrow channels around the block they wanted to extract. The top and sides were straightforward, but getting underneath was a real challenge. For the final break, they used one of the cleverest tricks in their playbook: wooden wedges. They'd hammer these wedges into prepared slots and then soak them with water. As the wood swelled, it expanded with incredible force, creating a slow, even pressure that would cleanly fracture the stone along the desired line. A perfect break meant success. A mistake could shatter the block, wasting weeks of hard labor. Once a block was freed, it wasn't ready just yet. It needed to be shaped. For the pyramid's hidden core blocks, a rough, rectangular shape was good enough. The gaps would be filled with mortar and stone chips to create a solid mass. But for the outer casing stones, the standards were incredibly high. These blocks had to have perfectly smooth surfaces and be cut to a precise angle of 51.8 degrees to create the pyramid's iconic slope. Master stonemasons used rulers and squares to check their work constantly. Each visible stone had 5 of its 6 faces dressed and smoothed. A single bad cut could ruin the flawless appearance of the final structure, so every piece had to be perfect. Now, for the pyramid's dazzling exterior, they used a special material. The finest, most brilliant white limestone came from quarries at Tura, across the Nile River. This wasn't just any stone, it was the premium stuff. Tura limestone can be polished to a mirror-like sheen. When the Great Pyramid was new, its 144,000 casing stones, all from Tura, would have gleamed in the sun like a divine beacon, visible for miles. Ancient writers said it was almost painfully bright to look at. The Tura quarries were different. They were underground galleries, tunnels carved deep into the hillsides. This was more dangerous work, but it protected the high-quality stone from the elements and provided more stable working conditions away from the scorching desert sun. And then there was granite. For the most critical structural parts, like the king's chamber, the builders used granite, one of the hardest stones on Earth. This incredibly tough rock was brought all the way from Aswan, 500 miles to the south. That's an epic journey. Some of these granite blocks weigh up to 80 tons. That's the weight of a commercial airplane. Imagine hauling that across the desert and then lifting it 20 stories high with millimeter precision. The logistics are mind-blowing, but they did it. Why? Granite was immensely strong, able to bear the colossal weight of the pyramid above without cracking. It was also a symbol of prestige and power, a testament to the pharaoh's reach and resources. Working with granite was a whole different challenge. Copper tools were useless against it. Instead, workers used heavy, rounded pounders made of dolerite, an even harder volcanic rock. Teams of men would stand and pound, slowly pulverizing the granite grain by grain to carve out a trench around a block. It was brutal, exhausting work that could take months for a single block. They also used fire, heating the rock and then dousing it with cold water to create thermal shock, cracking the stone. It was a risky technique, but sometimes necessary to quarry this incredibly stubborn material. You can still see the marks of their labor in the Aswan quarries today, a silent tribute to their strength and perseverance. Quality control was strict. A flawed block could compromise the entire structure. At the quarries, you can still find rejected stones, cracked or misshapen, abandoned where they lay. Inspectors would meticulously check each block with squares and straight edges before it was approved for transport. A cracked stone was a weak link. A poorly cut facing stone ruined the perfect finish. This incredible attention to detail is a huge reason why the pyramids have stood for 4,500 years. They didn't just build big, they built smart, and they built to last, rejecting anything that wasn't up to their incredibly high standards. So who were the people doing this backbreaking work? Forget the Hollywood image of slaves. These were skilled, paid laborers. Evidence from the workers' village at Giza shows they received good rations of bread, beer, meat, and fish. They were housed, cared for, and respected. We know this because they left their mark. Graffiti scrawled inside the pyramids and at the quarries, naming their work gangs. The drunkards of Menkaure, the friends of Khufu gang. These are the marks of proud crews, not oppressed slaves. They were part of a national project, building an eternal monument for their king and their civilization, and they took pride in their contribution to history. Finally, let's just try to comprehend the sheer scale of this operation. To build the Great Pyramid, workers had to quarry, shape, and move roughly 2.3 million blocks in about 20 years. That's over 300 blocks every single day. The Giza Plateau must have echoed with a constant symphony of industry, the rhythmic hammering of thousands of workers, the grating of saws, the crack of splitting stone, and the shouts of foremen. Managing this enterprise, tracking production, coordinating transport, supplying tools, and feeding thousands of workers required an organizational genius that is, frankly, staggering. It was one of the greatest logistical feats in human history. Extracting the stones was just the beginning. Now came perhaps the greatest challenge, moving them. A 2-ton block sitting in a quarry does you no good. It needs to reach the construction site. For local Giza limestone, this meant a journey of 1 kilometer or more. But for the special Tura limestone and Aswan granite, it meant a journey of hundreds of miles. So how did they accomplish this seemingly impossible task? The challenge wasn't just about brute force. It was a staggering logistical puzzle. A single 2-ton block needed about 20 men to move it. An 80-ton granite beam from Aswan. That could require 200 men pulling in perfect coordination. Now multiply that by thousands of blocks. You need roads, ramps, and a complex system of quarrying, transport, and construction teams all working in sync. If one part failed, the entire project would grind to a halt. So what was their primary tool? The humble wooden sledge. Think of it as a flat sled with runners underneath. Workers would secure the massive stone blocks to these sledges with ropes made from papyrus or palm fiber. We have archaeological evidence for this, including a famous tomb painting showing 172 men pulling a colossal statue on a sledge. And here's the clever part. Someone at the front is pouring liquid onto the sand. This wasn't just for show. This was a brilliant piece of practical physics. The person pouring water in that painting knew a secret that scientists only recently confirmed. Pouring just the right amount of water onto sand reduces friction by up to 50%. Dry sand creates a lot of resistance, but add a little water and the grains stick together, creating capillary bridges that make the surface firm and slick. Physicists tested this, and it works. It cut the required pulling force in half. The Egyptians didn't need to know the physics, they just knew it worked. This simple trick made moving massive stones possible with Bronze Age tech. Of course, you can't just drag multi-ton sledges across the open desert. It would be exhausting. So the Egyptians built roads, not paved roads like the Romans, but carefully prepared surfaces. Some were cut right into the bedrock for a smooth track. Others were built up from compacted limestone chips. We've even found evidence of roads with wooden beams laid across them, like ancient railway tracks. This wood-on-wood contact created even less friction. These roads required constant maintenance by dedicated crews who cleared sand and replaced worn-out beams. Now, let's talk about the hauling teams themselves. Moving a typical 2-ton block took a team of about 20 men. For the truly massive 80-ton granite blocks, it could have taken 200 men or more. These weren't just random guys, they were organized teams that trained together. A foreman would likely chant or sing to keep everyone pulling in perfect rhythm. Pulling together doubles your efficiency, while pulling out of sync just wastes energy. The teams probably rotated regularly to avoid exhaustion, a constant coordinated ballet of muscle and momentum. What about other tools? Some people suggest they used wooden rollers like logs placed under the sledges. It sounds plausible, but there's surprisingly little archaeological evidence for it. Rollers work well on hard, flat surfaces, but are terrible on sand. It's more likely they were used for short distances or tricky spots. What they definitely used were levers. A simple wooden beam and a rock for a fulcrum can lift enormous weights. If a sledge got stuck, a few workers with levers could lift it. Their technology was simple: inclined planes, levers, and sledges. No pulleys, no wheels, just human ingenuity. Timing was everything, and it was all dictated by the Nile River. Every summer the Nile would flood, turning the valley into a massive waterway. This was the perfect transportation window. During the flood, boats could sail much closer to the Giza Plateau. This is how the special stones from Tura and Aswan reached the construction site. The flood also meant that farmers couldn't work their fields, which freed up thousands of people for the pyramid project. It was a seasonal cycle, maximum effort during the flood, and more quarrying and prep work the rest of the year. Getting multi-ton stones onto and off of boats was another huge challenge. At the quarries, they would drag the sledges to the water's edge, likely onto temporary wooden docks. The stones were then loaded onto sophisticated flat-bottomed boats made of cedar. Some of these boats were over 30 meters long and could carry 50 tons or more. Once loaded, they'd sail or row to Giza. Unloading was the reverse process, using ramps to drag the stones from the boats back onto dry land. ready for the final leg of their journey. Let's put these journeys into perspective. Local limestone traveled just a kilometer or two. The White Tura limestone traveled about 13 kilometers by boat, but the massive granite from Aswan had to travel 800 kilometers down the Nile. Floating downstream with the current, this trip could take 2 to 3 weeks. But the return journey, sailing upstream against the current, would take even longer. A single round trip for granite could take up to 2 months. This required incredible forward planning to keep the supply chain moving. So when you put it all together, you see it wasn't just about moving stones. It was a vast, interconnected transportation network. Local stones moved daily from quarries. Boats arrived from distant sites. The entire operation was centrally coordinated, probably by the Vizier Hemiunu himself. They used written records on papyrus to track inventories, work assignments, and progress. This administrative infrastructure was just as crucial as the roads and boats. It was a Bronze Age logistics operation on a scale that is still mind-boggling today. Now we arrive at the construction site itself, where vision becomes reality. Before any blocks were placed, the site needed massive preparation. It wasn't just about leveling the ground. Imagine a temporary city, a bustling metropolis dedicated to one single purpose: building the pyramid. There were designated areas for everything: huge lots for storing blocks arriving from the quarries, workshops for stone dressing and tool repair, and even housing for the thousands of workers who would live on site. The site needed water sources, food storage, and administrative offices to manage it all. The storage areas were critical. You couldn't just drop a block and put it in the pyramid. They had to be sorted by size and quality, waiting for their turn. And the workshops were hives of activity. Blocks arrived roughly shaped and needed that final precise trim. Workers toiled with copper chisels and stone hammers, and those tools dulled fast. So workshops had furnaces constantly melting copper to cast new tools and workbenches for sharpening and repair. It was a logistical marvel before the first stone was even laid. And now the moment of truth, placing the first stones. This first course of blocks was absolutely crucial. Any error here, no matter how small, would be magnified with every single level, creating a disaster higher up. The base had to be perfectly level, perfectly square, and perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions. The first blocks were enormous, some of the largest in the entire pyramid, designed to anchor the whole structure. Workers positioned them with extreme care, using water levels and plumb bobs to ensure perfection. The gaps between them were filled with a special gypsum-based mortar, not to hold them together, but to fill tiny spaces and distribute the immense weight evenly. Once this first course was complete, a perfect square covering 13 acres, the real work could begin. This process alone could have taken months. Accuracy was everything. Rush it and the whole project is compromised. Get it right and the sky's the limit. So how did they actually set these colossal stones? For the first few courses at ground level, blocks were dragged on sledges right into position. But getting it close wasn't good enough. Teams used long wooden beams as levers, lifting one side of a block just a fraction of an inch, while others slid smaller stones underneath. Then they'd lever another side, making tiny adjustments, constantly checking with their tools. Plumb bobs ensured the sides were perfectly vertical. Wooden squares checked the right angles. Strings stretched between reference points confirmed the alignment. The precision was just mind-boggling. Many of these blocks fit so tightly you can't slip a knife blade between them. This wasn't just for looks, it was for stability. The tight fit spread the incredible pressure evenly, preventing cracks. It was a slow, patient process of place, check, adjust, and check again. Anything less than perfection was simply not an option. Let's talk about the mortar, because it's not what you think. In modern buildings, mortar acts like glue, holding bricks together. But in the pyramids, gravity did the heavy lifting. The sheer weight of millions of tons of stone is what holds everything in place. So what was the mortar for? It was a lubricant and a leveling agent. This gypsum-based mortar was spread to fill tiny gaps, creating a smoother surface for the massive blocks to slide on during final positioning. While the mortar was still wet, workers could make those final minute adjustments. Once it dried, it helped lock the blocks in place. We know it was made from gypsum, which was plentiful in Egypt. They would heat it, grind it into a powder, and then just add water. Some analyses have even found organic materials like hair or straw mixed in, acting as a kind of ancient fiber reinforcement to prevent cracking as it dried. It was another clever solution in a project full of them. Once the foundation was perfect, construction went vertical, level by level. Each new course was slightly smaller than the one below it, creating that iconic inward slope of the pyramid. And the same painstaking process repeated. Blocks were positioned, checked, and adjusted until they were perfect. But as the pyramid grew, the challenge intensified. Now blocks had to be hauled up massive ramps to get to the working level. The good news was that as the pyramid got taller, it also got narrower, so fewer blocks were needed for each new layer. The base might have required 50,000 blocks, while the highest levels needed only a few dozen. This probably allowed for a rotation of the workforce. Throughout it all, surveyors had one of the most important jobs: maintaining the precise angle of 51.8 degrees. They used special tools to constantly check the slope, ensuring the sides remained perfectly straight. Any deviation would be a visual and structural disaster. Now, let's look at something we can't see: the pyramid's core. The beautiful, smooth casing stones we imagine were just the outer skin. The bulk of the pyramid's mass, the core, was made of rougher, local limestone blocks that were never meant to be seen. These didn't need to be perfectly cut. The strategy was brilliant. Use your best materials and most skilled workers on the visible, precision-critical parts. Use rougher materials and faster methods for the internal structure. This allowed the project to move so much faster. The core was essentially massive stacks of stone, piled as solidly as possible, with mortar and even smaller rubble filling the gaps. They even incorporated the natural bedrock into the center of the base, building around a hill of rock. Why waste time removing perfectly good stone when you can make it part of your foundation? Modern imaging technology has shown us that this core isn't uniform, suggesting different work gangs might have had their own techniques. One of the most critical details was the corners. This is where two faces of the pyramid met, and if the angles were wrong, the entire geometry would fail. The corners used special stones, often larger and more precisely cut than the regular casing stones. Each one had two outer faces, both cut to the exact slope, locking the sides together structurally and visually. It seems the four cornerstones were the first to be placed on each new level. Once they were perfectly positioned, workers would simply fill in the sides between them. It makes perfect sense. Get the corners right and the rest follows. And their accuracy was astonishing. The angles are consistent, the alignment is true, and the geometry holds up across the entire structure. The corners also handled immense structural stress, so these stones had to be incredibly strong and perfectly fitted. Any weakness here could have brought the whole thing down. Imagine the human choreography required on site. Thousands of workers, all operating in the same space without getting in each other's way. Coordination was everything. Different work gangs were likely assigned to different faces of the pyramid, each with their own teams for specific tasks: positioning blocks, operating levers, checking measurements. Runners would be dashing back and forth with tools, water, and supplies. Communication would have been a mix of foremen shouting orders, flag signals for long-distance messages, and rhythmic work songs and chants to coordinate the efforts of a group lifting or pulling together. The noise must have been incredible, but it wasn't chaos. It was a complex machine of human effort, and safety was a concern. We found workers' skeletons with healed broken bones and crush injuries, evidence that they received medical care. These were valued, skilled workers, not disposable labor. The pace they had to maintain is simply staggering. To finish in 20 years, they needed to place around 800 blocks every single day. That's 800 massive stones quarried, transported, and perfectly positioned, day in and day out, from sunrise to sunset. The rhythm of construction would have been both hypnotic and completely exhausting. Of course, the seasonal Nile flood helped. This was when farm labor was free, allowing for a maximum workforce and peak progress. Then workers could rotate back to their farms. This visible progress, seeing the pyramid grow day by day, week by week, must have been an incredible morale booster. They could literally see their legacy taking shape, but maintaining this pace for 2 decades required unbelievable organization. Any breakdown in the supply chain or coordination would stop everything. The fact that they did it is a testament to the administrative genius behind the entire project. Finally, quality control was relentless. It didn't stop after the first course. On every level, for every block, inspectors were constantly circulating, checking the work. A poorly positioned block would be removed and reset. A badly cut casing stone would be sent back to the workshops. This obsession with quality is why the pyramids still stand. Lesser structures have long since crumbled to dust, but the pyramids endure because the work was done right. The cumulative effect of millions of correct decisions created a structure that has weathered 4,500 years. Even after the outer casing stones were stripped away centuries ago, the core remains solid, the geometry remains sound, and the structure stands as a monument to their skill. There were no shortcuts. Every block, every measurement, and every decision mattered. And that is why we can still marvel at their achievement today. Now let's tackle one of the greatest mysteries of pyramid construction: the ramps. How on earth did ancient workers lift millions of multi-ton blocks, hundreds of feet into the air, without any of the modern equipment we rely on today? The answer is ramps, but the big question is, what kind of ramps? This has obsessed engineers and historians for centuries. The core problem is that no complete ramp system has ever been found. We have bits of evidence, archaeological remains, ancient drawings, and simple logic that they existed. But the exact design is a puzzle. This uncertainty has led to dozens of theories, from the brilliant to the bizarre. Some are backed by solid math, while others just don't hold up. But here's a key idea. The Egyptians probably didn't stick to just one design. The needs of the project changed as the pyramid grew taller. Building the massive base is a different challenge than placing the final capstone. So, let's explore the leading theories and see what combination of clever tricks they likely used. First up is the most obvious idea: a single massive straight ramp leading from the ground all the way to the top. It's easy to picture workers dragging blocks up a long, gentle slope. As the pyramid grew, the ramp would get longer and higher. Simple, right? Well, the math says otherwise. The Great Pyramid is over 480 feet tall. To maintain a manageable slope, say 1 to 10, that ramp would need to be nearly a mile long. The sheer volume of material needed for the ramp would be greater than the pyramid itself. You'd essentially have to build a structure bigger than the pyramid just to build the pyramid and then tear it all down. It just doesn't seem practical for the whole project. However, a shorter straight ramp for the lower, heavier courses, that's much more plausible. Many experts agree it was likely used for the first phase of construction. So, if a straight ramp won't go all the way, what about a spiral ramp? Imagine a road wrapping around the outside of the pyramid, corkscrewing its way up to the top. This design is way more efficient. It maintains a constant, gentle slope without needing a mile-long footprint, and it uses far less material. It also gives workers access to all four sides of the pyramid. But this theory has its own issues. A ramp hugging the pyramid's faces would cover up the very surfaces the surveyors needed to keep straight. How could they ensure the pyramid's perfect angles if the corners were buried under a ramp? Some suggest the ramp was slightly offset, but that creates other engineering challenges. While physical evidence is thin, remains at other pyramids suggest spiral ramps were used. It's a strong contender, but the jury is still out. Now for a truly mind-bending idea, proposed by French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin, an internal ramp. He suggests that after using a short external ramp for the base, the builders moved construction inside. They would have built a ramp that spiraled up within the pyramid's core. This solves the problem of a massive external structure and explains some strange features we see today. For example, the Grand Gallery might have been part of this internal system, used as a channel to move blocks. Modern technology has even hinted at this possibility. Thermal scans have shown temperature anomalies that could be hidden corridors, and cosmic ray imaging has detected mysterious voids inside the pyramid, right where Houdin's theory predicts a ramp would be. Critics argue it's wasteful to build a ramp, you're just going to seal up forever. But supporters say it's far less wasteful than building and then demolishing a giant external one. Let's look at another option, the zigzag or switchback ramp. Picture a ramp climbing one face of the pyramid, then making a sharp turn onto a platform and continuing up the next face. This design is a clever mix of the straight and spiral theories. It keeps the slope manageable and uses less material than a single long ramp. Those switchback platforms would be crucial. They'd need to be large enough for teams to turn the heavy sledges around, and they could have doubled as workshops or rest areas. We actually have some archaeological evidence for this. At the pyramid of Amenemhat Y, remains of what looks like a zigzag ramp system have been found. The main drawback? Those corners. Turning multi-ton blocks on a dime would be tricky and potentially dangerous, creating bottlenecks. Still, for the middle stages of construction, it's a very practical solution. Of course, not every single lift required a massive ramp, especially in the upper reaches of the pyramid, where the blocks got smaller. Simpler methods would have worked. The Egyptians were masters of the lever. With enough long levers and enough manpower, you can lift incredible weights over short distances. Some researchers propose a step lift system. Imagine a block is at one level. Workers use levers to lift one end just enough to slide a wooden support underneath. They do the same on the other side. By repeating this process, inch by inch, they could gradually raise the block high enough to slide it onto the next course. It's slow and painstaking, but it works. For the top section of the pyramid, combining a smaller ramp with this kind of lever system would be an efficient way to finish the job without a huge ramp to the very peak. So what were these ramps actually made of? Building them out of solid stone would be insane. It would double the quarrying work. Instead, the ramps were almost certainly made of cheaper, more available materials: mud brick, limestone rubble, and sand. Mud bricks made from Nile mud and straw were the standard building blocks for temporary structures in ancient Egypt. They would have built retaining walls out of mud brick, then filled the space between them with rubble and sand left over from the quarrying. This fill would be packed down tight, and the top surface might have been paved with wooden beams or limestone chips to reduce friction for the sledges. We know this because we've found the remains of these mud brick and rubble ramps at several pyramid sites. And after construction was done, they just dismantled them. The materials were recycled or simply left to dissolve back into the desert. The physics of it all is fascinating. The slope of the ramp was a critical trade-off. Too steep and the workers couldn't pull the load. Too gentle and the ramp becomes impractically long. Experiments show that a slope of about 1 in 10 is the practical limit. The surface also mattered. Just as they did in the desert, the Egyptians likely lubricated the ramp surface with water, making it slicker and easier to drag the sledges across. Maintaining a consistent slope over thousands of feet was an incredible surveying challenge. Any bumps or dips would create bottlenecks and slow down the whole operation. As the pyramid grew, the ramp system had to be constantly modified and extended, all while maintaining these precise standards. It's a testament to their skill that they made it work day after day for years. So what's the most likely answer? It probably wasn't just one thing. The most accepted theory today is that the Egyptians used a combination of different ramp designs at different stages. Think of it as a multi-phase approach. Phase 1, a large straight ramp for the massive lower courses where they needed to move the most material quickly. Phase 2, as the pyramid got higher, they switched to a more efficient spiral or zigzag ramp for the middle section. And Phase 3, for the top, they used a smaller ramp system combined with clever levering techniques to place the final stones. This adaptable approach just makes sense. It explains why we find evidence for different ramp types and why no single theory fits all the facts perfectly. The Egyptians were brilliant, practical engineers, learning and adapting as they went. So why is this still a mystery? Because the evidence is incomplete. The ramps were temporary, built to be torn down. We're left with just fragments, bits of mud brick, ancient drawings, and tool marks on the stones. But the absence of a complete ramp isn't evidence they didn't exist. We know they had to be there. Thankfully, modern technology is giving us new ways to peek inside. Ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, and cosmic ray scans are revealing hidden features without damaging the pyramid. As this technology improves, we get closer to a definitive answer. Until then, we can marvel at the genius of the ancient Egyptians. They used a combination of straight, spiral, and internal ramps, along with levers and sheer human determination, to solve one of the greatest engineering challenges in history. Now let's explore the tools that made the impossible possible. When we think of Bronze Age technology, we often picture primitive tools, but that assumption is completely wrong. The ancient Egyptians had a sophisticated toolkit, perfected over centuries. They mostly used copper tools, not because bronze wasn't better, but because tin was scarce in Egypt. Now pure copper is soft, much softer than iron. Yet, with the right techniques, it could accomplish remarkable things. Their toolkit included copper chisels of all sizes, massive copper saws, axes, stone hammers, wooden mallets, and precise measuring tools like cubit rods and plumb bobs. For marking, they had special tools, and for grinding and polishing, they used abrasives like quartz sand. It might not sound like much compared to a modern construction site, but remember, they built the pyramids with these. The secret wasn't complex machinery. It was the incredible skill of the workers who knew how to master these simple tools. Let's focus on their primary tool, the copper chisel. These came in all shapes and sizes, each for a specific job. But here's the puzzle. How does soft copper cut hard limestone, let alone granite? The answer is work hardening. When you hammer copper repeatedly, its crystal structure changes, making it much harder. A work-hardened copper edge could effectively cut limestone, but not by itself. The real magic happened when they added sand. The chisel didn't really cut the stone. It acted as a holder for abrasive sand particles, which did the grinding. Workers constantly had to reshape and reharden their chisels. A chisel might lose inches in length in a single day, but nothing was wasted. Worn-out tools were melted down and recast into new ones. This efficient recycling meant their limited copper supply could support decades of massive construction. But what about super-hard stones like granite? Copper chisels were useless. For that, the Egyptians turned to dolerite pounders. These were heavy balls of extremely hard volcanic rock. Teams of workers would pound a granite block rhythmically, pulverizing it grain by grain along pre-marked lines. It was brutal, exhausting work. Imagine the aching arms, sore backs, and lungs full of dust. But it worked. Archaeologists have found thousands of these pounders at the Aswan quarries. Modern experiments confirm the technique is effective, but incredibly slow. Cutting a single block could take weeks of non-stop pounding. This explains why granite was used sparingly, saved only for the most important parts of the pyramid. These stone pounders were valuable tools, carefully maintained and prized by the workers who wielded them. Now for cutting and drilling, which is just fascinating. The Egyptians used huge copper saws, some over 6 feet long. Just like with chisels, they used sand as an abrasive. Workers would drag the saw back and forth, letting the sand grind a path through solid limestone. For perfectly straight cuts, they even used guide blocks. It took patience, but it worked. Even more impressive were their tube drills. Imagine a hollow copper cylinder. Workers would spin it, applying pressure and adding sand. This would cut a circular groove into the stone. Eventually, the core inside the tube could be snapped off, leaving a perfect hole. Some of these holes are so precise and show cutting rates so fast that it sparked a huge debate. How did they do it with just copper and sand? Some experts think they must have had a secret technology we haven't found yet. To achieve the pyramid's mind-boggling precision, they needed accurate measuring tools. The foundation of their system was the cubit rod, a standard measuring stick about 20.6 inches long. To get a perfect vertical line, they used a plumb bob, a weight on a string. Gravity never lies. For right angles, they had set squares, just like we use today. And to create a perfectly flat, level surface, they used simple troughs of water. These basic instruments in the hands of masters were all they needed. Modern surveys of the Great Pyramid confirm an accuracy that seems almost impossible with such simple equipment. It's a powerful reminder that it's not about having fancy gadgets. It's about the skill of the person using them. The Egyptian builders were absolute masters of their craft. Let's talk about the unsung heroes of transport: ropes and sledges. Ropes were everywhere, used for everything from hauling massive blocks to creating scaffolding. These weren't simple ropes. They were sophisticated cables, typically woven from papyrus or palm fiber, strong enough to handle immense weight. There must have been hundreds of miles of rope in use at any given time, making rope production a huge industry in itself. And then you have the sledges, the wooden platforms used to drag the stone blocks. Building these required skilled carpenters and a lot of wood, much of which had to be imported from places like Lebanon. These sledges took a beating and needed constant repair, keeping the carpentry workshops busy around the clock. The real secret weapon that made copper tools work was quartz sand. Quartz is harder than limestone and can even scratch granite. When workers used a copper tool, sand particles would embed in the soft metal and do the actual cutting. It was the sand, not the copper, that ground away the stone. They used different grades of sand for different jobs: coarse for rough cuts, fine for precision work. For polishing the outer casing stones to a mirror-like sheen, they used progressively finer abrasives, finishing with a limestone powder paste. The sheer volume of sand needed was enormous. The abrasive supply chain was another massive logistical puzzle they had to solve, another piece in the grand machinery of pyramid construction. While we focus on stone, woodworking was just as critical. They needed to build sledges, ramps, scaffolding, tool handles, and even boats. Egyptian carpenters had a full set of copper tools: axes, adzes, saws, and chisels. And they were experts. We know from surviving furniture that they had mastered advanced joinery techniques like mortise and tenon joints and dovetails. If they could build fine furniture, they could certainly build sturdy construction equipment. Wood was a precious resource in Egypt, so carpenters had to be efficient, wasting nothing. This created a fascinating interdependence. Stonemasons needed wooden tools and structures, while woodworkers needed stone foundations. It was a complex, interlocking economy, all focused on one single incredible goal. Tools wear out. On a project spanning 20 years with tens of thousands of workers, tool maintenance was a colossal operation. Coppersmithing workshops ran 24/7, casting new tools and recycling old ones. Estimates suggest hundreds of tons of copper were used, but it was constantly being melted down and reused. Tool sharpening was a constant task. Workers would trade dull chisels for sharp ones at workshops, ensuring the work never stopped. Even the stone pounders were reshaped as they wore down. This support system, from the copper mines in the Sinai to the rope-making facilities on the Nile, was a massive industrial operation in its own right, running parallel to the construction. Finally, it's crucial to understand that this technology wasn't static. It was the result of centuries of learning and innovation. Each pyramid built was a lesson. The builders of the Great Pyramid learned from the successes and failures of earlier projects like Sneferu's Bent Pyramid. Workers on the ground were constantly experimenting, discovering better techniques that would spread through the workforce. While some mysteries remain about how they achieved such incredible precision, their success wasn't about some lost super technology. It was about having the accumulated knowledge of generations, the resources of a powerful kingdom, and the organization to coordinate it all. Their tools were simple, but their vision, determination, and skill were anything but. Let's bust one of the biggest myths about the pyramids. For centuries, the story was all about slaves whipped and worked to death to build a monument for a pharaoh. But that picture, it's completely wrong. The pyramids were not built by slaves. They were built by paid, respected Egyptian citizens who were proud to be part of a great national project. How do we know? The evidence is everywhere. Archaeologists have found entire villages near the pyramids with comfortable houses, not slave quarters. We have their pay stubs, showing they were paid in bread, beer, and other goods. We've even found their cemeteries where workers were buried with honor, their tombs proudly mentioning their role in building the pyramid. They had medical clinics to treat injuries. Why would you waste medical care on a slave you could just replace? This wasn't a story of oppression, it was a story of a nation coming together. So, where did these tens of thousands of workers live? Forget crude camps. Excavations at Giza have uncovered organized towns with streets, houses, and public buildings. We're talking solid stone and mud brick homes, some for permanent workers and their families, others like dorms for seasonal crews. These villages were bustling. They had massive bakeries pumping out thousands of loaves of bread daily, and breweries for the beer that was a staple of their diet and pay. They had fish processing stations, butcher shops. These workers ate well, getting meat far more often than the average Egyptian. The scale of these villages, housing up to 30,000 people, shows just how massive the support system for the pyramids really was. Now let's talk about pay. Since ancient Egypt didn't have money, workers were paid in goods, primarily food. A standard daily wage was about 10 loaves of bread and a couple of jugs of beer. That might sound strange, but the beer was nutritious and safer to drink than some water sources. But it wasn't just bread and beer. They received meat, fish, vegetables like onions and garlic, and even linen for clothing. They weren't getting rich, but they were well fed and could support their families. Think about the logistics. Just feeding 20,000 workers could require up to 100,000 loaves of bread every single day. The supply chain to feed this army of builders was an incredible achievement in itself. You can't just throw thousands of people at a project and expect it to work. The workforce was highly organized. The basic unit was a work gang of about 20 to 40 men, and they had serious team spirit. They gave themselves awesome names like the Friends of Khufu Gang or the Vigorous Gang, and you can still find their graffiti today, proudly marking their work. These gangs were part of larger divisions, all fitting into a clear hierarchy that allowed orders to flow down and progress reports to flow up. This structure also sparked friendly competition. Gangs would race to quarry more stone or place blocks faster, boosting morale and productivity. Everyone was accounted for, ensuring they did their job and got paid for it. And this wasn't just unskilled labor. The pyramid workforce was a collection of specialists. You had master stonemasons who could finish a block of stone to a mirror-like sheen. You had surveyors who used geometry and astronomy to keep the pyramid perfectly aligned. There were carpenters building sledges and scaffolding, and coppersmiths forging and sharpening tools. On top of that, you needed the support staff, the bakers, brewers, doctors, and scribes who kept the whole operation running. Skills were passed down from master to apprentice, ensuring that over the 20-year construction period, the quality of the work never dropped. Building a pyramid was dangerous and injuries happened, but the evidence shows these workers received medical care, another nail in the coffin for the slave theory. In the workers' cemetery, we find skeletons with healed fractures, arms and legs that were broken but properly set. Some even show signs of successful amputations and complex skull surgeries. Egyptian medicine was surprisingly advanced, and they had doctors on site to treat injuries. If a skilled worker got hurt, they weren't just discarded. They might be given a lighter job like supervising because their knowledge was too valuable to lose. This wasn't just practical, it showed respect for the workers. And it wasn't just men. The workers' villages were real communities filled with women and children. Women performed vital jobs like grinding grain, baking, weaving, and managing households. In a society where women could own property and run businesses, some likely held administrative roles in the project as well. Children would have grown up in these villages, learning the trades of their parents. The presence of families turned these labor camps into living towns, full of all the complexities of human life. This human dimension is what truly brought the pyramids into being. The size of the workforce wasn't constant. It swelled during the Nile's annual flood, from July to October. During this time, farming was impossible, so thousands of farmers came to the pyramid site for paid work. In the other seasons, a smaller core group of permanent skilled workers kept the project moving. Most workers probably served for a season and then returned home, meaning hundreds of thousands of Egyptians likely contributed to the Great Pyramid over its 20-year construction. This system spread the economic benefits and turned the project into a shared national experience that united the country. So what kept them going for 2 decades? It was a mix of things. First, powerful religious belief. They were building a stairway to the heavens for their king, who they saw as a god. Working on the pyramid was an act of devotion. There was also immense national pride. This project proved Egypt was the greatest civilization on Earth. Plus, good old-fashioned competition between work gangs kept everyone motivated. And simply being treated well, being fed, paid, and cared for, makes a huge difference. Seeing the pyramid rise higher every day gave them a powerful sense of achievement. They knew they were making history, creating something that would last forever. For 4,500 years, the names of these builders were lost to time. We remembered the pharaoh, but not the thousands who did the work. But now archaeology is bringing their story back to light. In their cemeteries, we find their names carved on tomb walls. We find their graffiti, hidden deep inside the pyramids, little messages saying, "I was here, I did this." The pyramid is their legacy. They weren't slaves or victims. They were skilled, proud builders who created one of the world's greatest wonders. Their story is one of human ambition, skill, and an achievement that deserves our deepest respect. Now we're going to explore what most people never see, the interior of the Great Pyramid. While the exterior impresses with its scale, the interior amazes with its sophisticated architecture. The pyramid isn't solid stone. It's a network of chambers, corridors, and shafts that served ritual and structural purposes. 3 main chambers exist: the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the Subterranean Chamber, all connected by passages like the stunning Grand Gallery. This internal system wasn't an afterthought. It was planned from the start, with chambers precisely positioned and passages perfectly aligned. Building these hollow spaces while stacking millions of tons of stone above them required brilliant engineering. How do you stop a room from collapsing under that unimaginable weight? The Egyptians solved these problems with solutions that still work perfectly after 4,500 years. Let's head inside. The original entrance is on the north face, about 55 feet above the ground. It leads to the descending passage, a corridor sloping down at a 26-degree angle. It's tiny, only about 3.5 feet square, so you have to hunch over. This passage runs for about 345 feet, straight through the pyramid's core and into the bedrock below. The engineering is remarkable. It's perfectly straight over its entire length. How did they do it? Workers likely used plumb bobs and strings, carefully excavating downward with copper chisels in dark, claustrophobic conditions. Today, tourists use a different entrance, the so-called Robber's Tunnel, which was smashed through the stone in the Middle Ages by treasure hunters. It's a crude shortcut into the pyramid's original, elegant design. Following the descending passage deep beneath the pyramid, we find the subterranean chamber. It's carved directly from the bedrock, about 100 feet below the base. This chamber is rough and unfinished, with an uneven floor and a strange pit that seems to lead nowhere. Why was it left like this? Maybe it was the original plan for the burial chamber, but the design changed. Or maybe it served a ritual purpose representing the underworld. Its unfinished state could even be intentional, part of the pyramid's symbolism. The sheer effort to carve this huge room out of solid rock, only to abandon it, is a puzzle. It shows us that for all we know, the pyramid still holds deep mysteries. Some secrets died with their builders. Now for a remarkable feature. About 60 feet down the descending passage, another corridor branches off, climbing upwards at the exact same 26-degree angle. This is the ascending passage. It's just as cramped, about 129 feet long, and was originally sealed tight. After the pharaoh's burial, 3 massive granite plugs were slid down this passage, blocking it to prevent tomb robbers from reaching the upper chambers. The robbers had to tunnel around them, not through them. The passage itself is beautifully constructed, with smooth walls and a consistent angle, built layer by layer as the pyramid rose. At the top, the architecture opens dramatically into the Grand Gallery, but just before that, a horizontal passage leads to the Queen's Chamber. And here we are, in the so-called Queen's Chamber. The name is a bit of a misnomer. It likely had nothing to do with a queen. Early explorers named it that because of its pointed gabled ceiling. The chamber is made of limestone and sits right at the pyramid's center. The ceiling uses a corbelled design, where each layer of stone juts out slightly over the one below, distributing the immense weight and preventing collapse. Its true purpose is a mystery. Was it a backup burial chamber? A room for a statue of the pharaoh's spirit? We just don't know. From its walls, two narrow shafts extend upward, sealed at both ends. In the 90s, a small robot explored one and found a door with copper handles. What's behind it remains one of the pyramid's most tantalizing secrets. From the cramped passages, we enter the breathtaking Grand Gallery. This is a masterpiece of ancient architecture. It's a soaring, corbelled hallway that continues the 26-degree upward slope for another 153 feet. It's nearly 28 feet high, with 7 layers of massive limestone blocks, each one jutting out over the one below, creating a stunning, vaulted effect. Imagine seeing this for the first time by flickering torchlight. Its purpose isn't entirely clear. It's a passage, obviously, but why so grand? Some think it was a clever construction aid, used to store the huge granite plugs that sealed the ascending passage. Others believe it had a ceremonial role in the pharaoh's funeral. Walking through it today, you can't help but feel a sense of awe at this incredible achievement. At the top of the Grand Gallery, we reach the heart of the pyramid, the King's Chamber. This is where Pharaoh Khufu was laid to rest. The entire room is built from massive blocks of red granite hauled over 500 miles from Aswan. The ceiling alone is made of 9 granite beams, each weighing around 50 tons, lifted 140 feet into the air. How they manage that is one of the greatest mysteries of construction. Inside, there's only one thing: a lidless granite sarcophagus. It's too big to fit through the doorway, so it must have been placed here during construction. Similar to the Queen's Chamber, 2 small shafts extend from the walls, but these ones lead all the way to the outside. Were they for ventilation or symbolic paths for the pharaoh's spirit to ascend to the stars? Now let's look at a hidden marvel of engineering: the relieving chambers. Stacked directly above the King's Chamber are 5 low-ceiling spaces. These weren't rooms for people, they were a brilliant structural solution. Their purpose was to redirect the unimaginable weight of the pyramid away from the burial chamber, preventing its ceiling from being crushed. The top chamber has a pointed roof, which acts like an arch to channel the load safely into the surrounding stone. This system has worked perfectly for 4,500 years. These chambers also hold a secret: ancient graffiti left by the work crews, including the name of Pharaoh Khufu. This is some of the strongest evidence directly linking him to the Great Pyramid's construction. You might think that after centuries of exploration, we know everything about the pyramid's interior, but you'd be wrong. In 2017, using a technique that scans for cosmic particles, scientists discovered a massive hidden void above the Grand Gallery. It's at least 100 feet long, but we have no idea what it is. Is it another chamber? A structural feature? We can't get inside without drilling, so for now it remains a mystery. Other technologies, like thermal imaging, have detected strange anomalies that could be more hidden rooms or passages. The pyramid continues to surprise us, slowly revealing its secrets and proving that its ancient builders were far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. Finally, we must remember that the pyramid's interior was more than just engineering. It was deeply symbolic. For the ancient Egyptians, the pyramid was a machine for resurrection. The passages represented the pharaoh's soul journeying from the underworld to the stars. The chambers were stages of transformation. Every angle and proportion had cosmic meaning. The builders weren't just stacking stones, they were building an eternal home for their god-king, ensuring his rebirth and the prosperity of Egypt. This fusion of practical skill and spiritual purpose is what makes the Great Pyramid so unique. It's a monument to human ambition, belief, and our timeless quest to build something that will outlast us all. Have you ever wondered what the pyramids really looked like when they were first built? Today we see these incredible stepped structures, their rough limestone blocks baked by thousands of years of sun. But this isn't their original look. Imagine, if you will, the entire pyramid, from top to bottom, encased in smooth, polished, brilliant white limestone. The whole surface, a continuous gleaming slope that would have been almost blinding in the desert sun. Ancient writers said you could see them from miles away, these massive white geometric giants rising from the golden sands, shining like polished marble. As the sun moved, they would glow and shimmer, catching the pink and orange hues of sunrise and sunset. This wasn't just for show, it was a statement. The pyramids were monuments of power, designed to inspire awe. The brilliant white casing turned them into something almost supernatural, a testament to the pharaoh's ability to command nature and create something of divine beauty. Over the centuries, most of these casing stones were stripped away to build the city of Cairo, but small sections still survive at the base, giving us a tantalizing glimpse of their original glory. So, what was this amazing material? The dazzling white shell was made from Tura limestone, a special type of stone quarried from across the Nile. The Great Pyramid alone was covered by an estimated 144,000 of these casing stones, each weighing several tons. Tura limestone is incredibly fine-grained, dense, and can be polished to a mirror-like shine, far superior to the local stone used for the pyramid's core. Each stone was cut with breathtaking precision. The outer face had to be cut at exactly 51.8 degrees to create the pyramid's iconic slope. The sides had to be perfectly straight so they could fit together seamlessly. And the joints between them? They were so tight, you often can't even fit a knife blade between them. This incredible precision created the illusion of a single smooth surface and also made the structure stronger, preventing water from seeping in. Crafting each stone was a monumental task, likely taking weeks. When you multiply that by 144,000, you realize just how much effort went into making the pyramid not just big, but beautiful. Now, how did they install these perfect stones? You might think they worked from the bottom up, but it was likely the other way around, from the top down. Here's why that makes sense. As the core of the pyramid was being built, it formed a giant staircase. The casing stones were probably brought up and roughly placed, but the final delicate work of fitting and polishing happened after the entire core was complete. Workers would start at the very top with the capstone and then work their way down, level by level. This meant any debris from cutting and polishing would fall onto unfinished sections below, not damaging the beautifully finished surfaces above. As they completed each level, they would dismantle the construction ramps that got them there. By the time they reached the bottom, the ramps were gone and the pyramid stood free, gleaming and perfect. This finishing work required even more skill than building the core. It was all about geometric perfection, exact angles, smooth surfaces, and invisible joints. Creating that mirror-like finish was an art form in itself. Once the casing stones were in place, the real polishing began. This was a long, laborious process. Workers would start by rubbing the surface with abrasive stones like sandstone to grind away any bumps and create a uniform face. Then they moved to finer and finer abrasives, like sand mixed with water, to create a grinding paste. They would rub and rub hour after hour, slowly smoothing out microscopic irregularities. The final polish might have even used a paste of powdered limestone, essentially polishing the stone with its own ultrafine dust. To enhance the shine and protect the surface, they might have applied oils like linseed oil, which would fill any tiny pores. Imagine thousands of workers, all polishing different sections at once for years, to turn 45 acres of stone into a single reflective surface. Every part had to be perfect, because any flaw would be immediately visible on that vast, smooth canvas. At the very peak of the pyramid was its crowning jewel, the pyramidion, or capstone. This was the final piece, the apex of the entire structure. The Great Pyramid's pyramidion is long gone, probably looted centuries ago because it was likely made of precious materials. But from other smaller pyramids, we know what it might have been like. It was essentially a miniature pyramid carved from a single block of stone, maybe a few feet high. Its surfaces were polished to perfection and might have been covered in sheets of pure gold or electrum, an alloy of gold and silver. Ancient texts describe these pyramidions gleaming like the sun itself. Placing the capstone was a huge ceremonial event. It marked the moment the pyramid was finally complete, the point where the earthly structure touched the sky. It symbolized the pharaoh's spirit ascending to the heavens. Its installation wasn't just the end of a construction project. It was the completion of a sacred mission. Throughout this entire finishing process, maintaining precision was absolutely critical. As the workers installed the casing stones from the top down, surveyors were constantly checking everything. They had to ensure the slope of all four faces remained perfect, that the edges were ruler straight, and that the corners met flawlessly. Any mistake would be glaringly obvious on the smooth, finished surface. They used simple but effective tools: stretched strings, plumb bobs, and wooden angle templates. This was their last chance to correct any tiny errors that might have crept in during the core's construction. If one section was slightly off, they could subtly adjust the shape of the casing stones to bring the surface back to true perfection. The four corners were especially crucial, as any misalignment there would be visible for miles. Modern surveys show they did an incredible job. The alignment is nearly perfect, with deviations so small you'd need modern instruments to even notice them. It's a mind-boggling level of quality control. The pyramid didn't just rise from the sand. It sat on a massive, carefully prepared platform. This platform extended out to form a paved courtyard made of fine limestone blocks. This courtyard served a few purposes. It provided a clean, stable surface around the pyramid, preventing sand from piling up against the base. It also created a sacred boundary, separating the divine pyramid from the ordinary desert. This complex was more than just the pyramid itself. Attached to the east face was the mortuary temple, where rituals for the deceased pharaoh were performed. From there, a long covered causeway led down to a valley temple near the Nile. This created a grand processional path. The pyramid was the stunning centerpiece, but it was part of an entire integrated complex, all of it built with the same incredible precision and planning. Everything, the pyramid, courtyard, temples, and causeway, worked together as a single monumental statement of belief and power. So, were there any writings on the pyramid? The exposed core stones we see today have lots of markings from construction: quarry marks, team names, alignment lines. But the original polished casing was probably a different story. It's likely the exterior surfaces were kept completely bare. Adding inscriptions would have ruined that perfect monolithic look. The pyramid's power came from its pure geometric form, which needed no words to explain it. However, the inner faces of the casing stones, the ones hidden from view, did have markings. And deep inside the pyramid, in hidden chambers, we found inscriptions, including the name of Pharaoh Khufu, which is how we know for sure that he built it. The temples connected to the pyramid, however, would have been covered in hieroglyphs, explaining the pyramid's purpose and honoring the pharaoh. The pyramid itself was a silent, geometric statement, while the surrounding buildings provided the story. The builders intended for the pyramid to last forever, and they designed it that way. The polished casing stones were the first line of defense, shedding water and protecting the core. The incredibly tight joints prevented moisture from getting in and causing damage. The pyramid's sloped shape is naturally resistant to wind, rain, and sand. Internally, the entire structure is in compression, with millions of tons of stone pressing straight down. Which stone is exceptionally good at handling. Even the location was chosen for durability, high on a bedrock plateau, safe from the Nile's floods. And their design worked. Although humans stripped off the casing, the core structure has survived 4,500 years of harsh desert conditions with remarkable stability. It's not going to collapse. It could stand for thousands of more years. This incredible longevity wasn't an accident. It was the result of brilliant engineering and a deep understanding of how to build for eternity. Finally, imagine the day of completion. After about 20 years of non-stop work, after millions of blocks were cut and placed, after the entire surface was polished to perfection, and the golden pyramidion was set at the top, the Great Pyramid was finished. It must have been an overwhelming moment for everyone. Pharaoh Khufu saw his eternal monument realized. The architect Hemiunu saw his vision made perfect. And the workers saw the magnificent culmination of their sweat and skill. This moment was surely marked by huge celebrations and religious ceremonies, consecrating the pyramid as a sacred place. Soon after, the massive construction site would fall silent. When Khufu died, the pyramid fulfilled its ultimate purpose. His body was placed in the king's chamber, the passages were sealed, and his journey to the afterlife began. The pyramid transformed from a construction project into a divine monument, a beacon that has outlasted empires and continues to capture our imagination to this day. For 4,500 years, these structures have stood silent witnesses to the entire drama of human civilization. When the pyramids were new, most of the world lived in small farming communities. Cities were a novelty, writing was in its infancy, and most technology was Stone or Bronze Age. Yet, the pyramids stood. 1,000 years later, during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, they were already ancient monuments, visited with the same awe we feel today. Another millennium passed. Great pharaohs like Ramesses II ruled Egypt. The pyramids were older to them than Ramesses is to us, and still they stood. The classical Greeks rose. Herodotus visited around 450 BC, when they were already 2,000 years old. He recorded stories about their construction, saving knowledge that would have been lost forever. Rome came to power, and Egypt became a Roman province. The pyramids stood older than Rome itself. Christianity and then Islam swept across the land. Dynasties rose and fell. Through the Renaissance, the age of exploration, the scientific and industrial revolutions, through all these monumental shifts, the pyramids endured. Unchanged, eternal. But the greatest damage the pyramids ever suffered wasn't from time, but from people. For most of their history, they were gleaming white monuments. Then, in medieval times, earthquakes rocked Cairo. Builders, desperate for quality stone, looked to the Giza Plateau. Over centuries, they stripped away most of the smooth white casing stones to build the mosques and fortresses of a new city. Some of Cairo's most famous historic buildings contain stone that once covered the pyramids. To them, it wasn't vandalism. It was practical recycling of abandoned ruins. But the loss was devastating. The brilliant white surfaces, the perfect geometric slopes, all gone, revealing the stepped core we see today. The process even damaged some interior passages. By the time European scholars began their studies in the 18th and 19th centuries, the casing was mostly gone. Only small sections remain, like at the base of the Great Pyramid and the peak of Khafra's, giving us just a glimpse of their original glory. Today, Modern preservation ensures no more damage occurs, but most of that brilliant casing is gone forever, a permanent change to one of humanity's greatest achievements. While the pyramids were never truly lost, they're a bit hard to miss. Systematic study is surprisingly recent. The 18th century brought European travelers, but it was Napoleon's expedition in 1798, with its team of scholars, that truly sparked a massive wave of European interest. The 19th century saw the birth of real archaeology, with pioneers like Petrie and Belzoni excavating, surveying, and documenting the sites with a precision that's still valued today. The 20th century brought more advanced techniques, and today we use satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and even cosmic ray detectors to learn their secrets without causing any damage. Importantly, the era of foreign explorers taking artifacts is over. Today, Egyptian archaeologists lead the way, protecting and studying these monuments as their own national treasures and a shared world heritage. For 4,500 years, the pyramid form has inspired builders across the globe. We see similar shapes in the ziggurats of Mesopotamia and the pyramids of Mesoamerica, a testament to its universal appeal. In modern times, architects have directly referenced the pyramids. Look at the Louvre in Paris, or the countless memorials that borrow the form to convey a sense of permanence. Even the Washington Monument, though an obelisk, reflects that Egyptian influence. But it's more than just the shape. The very idea of a monumental project, a mega structure built to inspire awe, traces back to Giza. Our modern skyscrapers, our mega dams, our space programs, these are our era's pyramids, pushing the limits of engineering to make a statement that will last. Beyond architecture, the pyramids have become powerful symbols. The very shape suggests stability and hierarchy. We talk about pyramid schemes or pyramids of power. They represent ancient wisdom and mystery, fueling our imagination with ideas of hidden knowledge and esoteric secrets. They're a metaphor for human achievement against all odds. To say you're building a pyramid means you're tackling something extraordinary, but most of all, they symbolize endurance. In our world where so little is built to last, the pyramids remind us that human works can outlive entire civilizations. For Egypt, they are a profound national symbol, a source of immense pride and a connection to a glorious past. This brings us to their modern economic importance. The pyramids are one of the world's top tourist attractions, drawing millions of visitors every year. This has a massive economic impact, supporting a vast infrastructure of hotels, restaurants, and tour companies. Tens of thousands of Egyptians make their living directly from this tourism. That revenue, in turn, helps fund the preservation and research that protects the sites. But it's a delicate balance. Millions of visitors create wear and tear. The government must constantly manage access to protect the monuments while still accommodating tourists. It is a challenge to ensure that future generations can still stand in awe before these ancient wonders. Studying the pyramids has also pushed science forward. Engineers analyze their construction to understand large-scale project management. Archaeologists developed many of their core methods while investigating these sites. The need to see inside without destroying them led to innovations like using cosmic rays for scanning, technology that now has applications in other fields. Studying their alignment advanced our understanding of ancient astronomy and mathematics. Of course, the pyramids have a huge role in popular culture. They've been the setting for countless movies, books, and video games, portrayed as everything from treasure vaults to alien landing pads. They appear in adventure novels, science fiction, and historical fiction. They're a staple in games, whether you're exploring their passages or building them in a strategy game. This cultural saturation means everyone knows about the pyramids, which is great for sparking interest. It's a powerful symbol that can instantly convey a sense of mystery, ancientness, and monumental scale, making them a permanent fixture in our collective imagination. So, what lessons can we, in our modern world, learn from the pyramid builders? First, the importance of long-term thinking. They built for eternity, a powerful reminder in our culture of short-term gains. Second, ambitious goals inspire extraordinary effort. The pyramids show us that with vision and planning, the seemingly impossible becomes achievable. Third, the power of organization. No single person could build a pyramid, but coordinated, they accomplished wonders. Fourth, quality craftsmanship creates enduring value. In our disposable world, the pyramids remind us that making things well matters. And finally, shared purpose unites people. These were national projects that gave a society a shared identity, a lesson we could certainly use today. Let's end with a final, profound thought. Consider what the pyramids have witnessed. They watched ancient Egypt rise and fall. They saw the arrival of the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. They witnessed the birth of Christianity and the rise of Islam. They stood through the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, and the dawn of the digital age. They have seen humanity grow from a few million to nearly 8 billion. They connect us directly to people who lived 4,500 years ago. We can touch stones they last touched. They are gone, their civilization is gone, but their work remains, a testament to their skill, their ambition, and their humanity. They are eternal witnesses to our story, and they will likely outlast us all, standing for future civilizations as a reminder that we were here. Let's explore the incredible journey of the pyramids through time. For 4,500 years, these structures have stood, watching human civilization transform completely. When they were new, most of the world was a collection of small farming communities. Cities were rare. Writing was a new invention. Humans hadn't even figured out how to work with iron yet. And still, the pyramids stood. 1,000 years later, during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, they were already ancient monuments visited with the same awe we feel today. Another 1,000 years passed. Pharaohs like Ramesses II ruled, and the pyramids were older to them than Ramesses is to us. Then came the Greeks. Herodotus visited around 450 BC, recording stories that would have otherwise been lost. Rome rose, conquered Egypt, and fell. Through the rise of Christianity, the spread of Islam, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, through all these massive changes, the pyramids endured. But what happened to their original gleaming white appearance? The greatest damage they ever suffered was the removal of their casing stones. In medieval times, earthquakes rocked Cairo, and builders needed stone for reconstruction. The pyramids were a convenient quarry. Over centuries, most of the smooth, white limestone was stripped away and used to build mosques and fortresses in Cairo. It wasn't vandalism as we see it, it was practical recycling. But the loss was devastating. The brilliant white surfaces and perfect slopes were gone, exposing the stepped core we see today. Only small sections survive, like at the base of the Great Pyramid and the top of Khafra's, giving us a glimpse of their original glory. While the pyramids were never truly lost, systematic study is a relatively recent thing. In the 18th century, European travelers began documenting them, and Napoleon's expedition in 1798 sparked massive interest. The 19th century saw serious archaeology begin, with pioneers like Flinders Petrie making incredibly precise measurements that are still valuable. The 20th and 21st centuries brought amazing new tech, ground-penetrating radar, satellite imaging, and even cosmic ray detectors to peer inside without causing damage. Today, Egyptian archaeologists rightfully lead these efforts, preserving their national treasures for the world. The days of explorers carting off artifacts are thankfully over. For 4,500 years, the pyramid form has inspired builders worldwide. From the ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the pyramids of the Americas, the shape has a universal appeal. More recently, architects have directly referenced them. Think of the Louvre Pyramid in Paris, or even the Washington Monument, which, while an obelisk, draws from Egyptian influence. Beyond literal shapes, the very idea of a monumental project, a skyscraper, a mega dam, a space program, traces its roots back to the pyramids. They are the purest expression of the human impulse to build something awe-inspiring, something that makes a statement. The pyramids are more than just buildings. They're powerful symbols. The shape itself represents stability and hierarchy. We even talk about pyramid schemes or organizational pyramids. They also symbolize ancient wisdom and mystery, inspiring all sorts of spiritual and New Age beliefs. But most of all, they represent human achievement against all odds. To say you're building a pyramid means you're accomplishing something extraordinary. They are a profound reminder that human works can endure for millennia, bridging incomprehensible spans of time. For Egypt, they are a deep source of national pride, appearing on currency and official seals. Today, that pride translates into a major economic engine. The pyramids are one of the world's top tourist attractions, drawing millions of visitors and supporting tens of thousands of jobs in Egypt. This tourism revenue is crucial for funding preservation and research. Of course, it's a balancing act. Too many visitors can cause wear and tear, so the Egyptian government carefully manages access to protect these ancient wonders for future generations. Standing before them, you can feel that essential awe, a powerful connection that has remained unchanged across millennia. Studying the pyramids has pushed science forward in amazing ways. Engineers learn from ancient construction techniques. Archaeologists develop many of their standard practices right here. And the need to explore without destroying the monuments led to incredible new technologies, like using cosmic rays to see inside the stone. We've also gained huge insights into ancient math, astronomy, and how a society can organize massive projects. The pyramids are a laboratory for understanding not just how to build, but how to build a civilization. Of course, the pyramids are also superstars in pop culture. They've appeared in countless movies, books, and video games as treasure vaults, alien landing pads, or sources of mystical power. These portrayals aren't always accurate, but they fuel a global fascination. This cultural saturation means everyone knows the pyramids, even if it's through a fantasy lens. It creates a wonderful opportunity to share the real and even more amazing history behind these iconic structures. So what can we learn from the builders of the pyramids? First, the power of long-term thinking. They built for eternity, a stark contrast to our often short-term focus. Second, ambitious goals inspire extraordinary effort. The pyramids remind us that what seems impossible can be achieved with vision and dedication. They teach us that organization multiplies human power and that quality craftsmanship creates enduring value. And perhaps most importantly, they were built not by slaves, but by paid workers who were respected. A lesson in management from 4,500 years ago. Imagine what these structures have witnessed. They saw the entire arc of ancient Egypt, the rise and fall of the Greek and Roman empires, the birth of modern religions, the Industrial Revolution, and the dawn of the space age. Through it all they remain, permanent points in the flow of time. They connect us directly to the people who built them, people whose work has outlasted their own civilization. They are eternal witnesses to human history, and they will likely stand long after our own time has passed, a silent testament to our enduring ambition and skill. Our journey is nearing its end, but the story of the pyramids is far from over. After exploring their construction, the workers, their tools, and their incredible legacy, we must acknowledge that mysteries still linger and future discoveries are waiting just around the corner. For centuries, these ancient wonders have been studied, yet they continue to guard their secrets. But with every new technology, every new archaeological dig, and every fresh look at old evidence, another piece of the puzzle falls into place. So what do we still not know? What might we uncover in the coming decades? First, the precise methods for building the upper levels and their complex ramp systems are still debated. We have the general idea, but the fine details of that final push to the top remain elusive. Second, could there be hidden chambers? The mysterious void found above the Grand Gallery is a tantalizing clue that undiscovered spaces might still be hidden within the stone. Third, so much of the Giza Plateau is still buried under sand. The workers' villages, the quarries, these areas have only been partially excavated. Digging deeper will tell us more about the people who made it all happen. Fourth, we might yet find more ancient records. Papyri detailing construction or administration could be waiting in forgotten archives. And finally, technology never stops advancing. Future researchers will have tools we can't even dream of today, allowing them to ask new questions and find new answers. Each generation brings a fresh perspective to these ancient mysteries. Let's talk about one of the most exciting recent discoveries, that mysterious void detected above the Grand Gallery in 2017. Using a technique called cosmic ray muon imaging, scientists found a huge empty space deep inside the pyramid. This isn't some small gap. It's at least 100 feet long, with a volume similar to the Grand Gallery itself. So, what is it? The truth is, we don't know for sure. It could be a deliberately hidden chamber sealed off during construction. If so, what secrets does it hold? Sacred artifacts, ancient records, or maybe it's an architectural feature like part of the internal ramp system proposed by some theorists. It could even be just a construction gap, a space left over after a ramp was removed. The biggest challenge now is how to investigate it without damaging this 4,500-year-old monument. Drilling into the pyramid is not an option. Researchers are exploring non-destructive methods, like sending in tiny robots or using even more advanced imaging. This discovery proves that the pyramids can still surprise us. What other secrets are they hiding in plain sight? The thrill of discovery is still very much alive. The discovery of the void is a perfect example of how modern technology is unlocking ancient secrets. Muon imaging works by tracking particles from space as they pass through the pyramid. By measuring how many particles get through, scientists can create a density map, revealing solid stone versus empty voids. But that's not all. Ground-penetrating radar sends electromagnetic pulses into the earth, bouncing back to reveal buried structures like passages and chambers without ever lifting a shovel. Thermal imaging cameras can spot temperature differences on the pyramid's surface, which can indicate hidden air pockets that heat and cool differently than solid stone. 3D laser scanning creates incredibly precise digital models, allowing researchers to virtually explore every inch and track changes over time. Even the stones themselves are giving up their secrets. Chemical analysis can tell us where they were quarried, and DNA analysis of human remains from the workers' cemeteries reveals details about their origins, diet, and health. Each new technology is like a new key, unlocking another door into the past. While we explore with new tech, traditional archaeology is far from finished. The areas surrounding the pyramids are a treasure trove of information that's still largely underground. The workers' villages have only been partially uncovered. Imagine the houses, workshops, and administrative buildings still waiting to be found, each one telling us more about how this massive project was organized. The quarries around Giza could hold undiscovered tool caches or inscriptions. We found several boat pits near the pyramids, but some are still sealed. What might we learn from excavating and studying these ancient vessels? And the vast cemeteries for workers and officials contain thousands of tombs, many untouched. Each one is a time capsule, potentially holding inscriptions, artifacts, and human remains that tell a personal story. Modern archaeology is careful and selective, but every small discovery, an inscription, a tool, a piece of pottery, adds to the rich tapestry of our understanding of ancient Egyptian civilization. The pyramids have stood for 4.5 millennia, but their future is not guaranteed. They face modern threats that challenge their very existence. Pollution from the sprawling city of Cairo eats away at the ancient stones. Rising groundwater levels, caused by modern irrigation and urban development, threaten their foundations. Climate change brings the risk of increased rainfall and temperature extremes, which could accelerate weathering. And tourism, while vital, takes its toll. The footsteps and breath of millions of visitors each year cause wear and tear. Preserving these monuments requires a constant battle. Egyptian authorities, along with international organizations like UNESCO, are working hard to protect them. They're implementing strategies to manage groundwater, reduce pollution, and control tourism. The goal is to ensure that these wonders don't just survive for another century, but for another 4,500 years. It's a global responsibility to protect our shared human heritage. The bones of the pyramid builders are telling us their stories. Physical anthropologists studying skeletal remains from the workers' cemeteries are painting a vivid picture of their lives. Analysis of the bones shows they ate a diet rich in protein from meat and fish. These were not starving laborers, but a well-fed workforce. We can also see the toll of their hard work. Skeletons show evidence of broken bones, crush injuries, and spinal damage. But crucially, many of these injuries show signs of proper healing, which tells us they had access to skilled medical care. These workers weren't simply worked to death, many lived into their 40s, 50s, and even 60s. Genetic analysis is revealing that they came from all over Egypt, confirming that building the pyramids was a truly national project. With every new study, these ancient workers become less like anonymous laborers and more like real people with lives, families, and stories worth telling. The world of Egyptology is anything but static. It's a field full of lively debates and new ideas. Scholars are constantly questioning old assumptions and proposing new theories. For example, how big was the workforce? Was it a massive permanent crew or a smaller core team supplemented by seasonal workers? How long did it really take to build the Great Pyramid? While 20 years is the general consensus, some still debate the timeline. And of course, the Great Ramp debate rages on, with new theories popping up all the time. Even the purpose of known features, like the mysterious shafts in the king's and queen's chambers, is still being discussed. Are they for ventilation, religious ritual, or something else entirely? These debates are a sign of a healthy, active field of study. Disagreements don't mean we know nothing. They mean we're pushing the boundaries of knowledge, refining our understanding with every new piece of evidence. Believe it or not, the pyramids are still influencing architecture and engineering today. Their simple, powerful geometry and incredible structural efficiency continue to inspire modern designers. You can see their influence in projects like the Glass Pyramid at the Louvre or the Palace of Peace and Reconciliation in Kazakhstan. The form is so stable and efficient that it's even been proposed for habitats on the Moon and Mars. The organizational genius behind the pyramid projects also offers lessons for modern mega projects. Managing thousands of workers and complex logistics is a challenge as relevant today as it was 4,500 years ago. In an age where things are often built to be temporary, the pyramids are a powerful reminder of what it means to build for eternity. They inspire us to think about durability and long-term design, pushing us to create structures that will stand the test of time. It's so important that we pass on the true story of the pyramids to future generations. Accurate education is our best defense against the flood of pseudoscience and conspiracy theories. Teaching about the pyramids is more than just a history lesson. It's a lesson in critical thinking. It teaches students how to evaluate evidence and distinguish fact from fiction. It also broadens our worldview, showing us the incredible achievements of a non-Western African civilization thousands of years ago. The pyramids are a testament to human potential, demonstrating what we can achieve through organization, skill, and sheer determination. The challenge is to make the real story as exciting as the fiction. Through engaging documentaries, interactive museum exhibits, and accessible online resources, we can inspire a new generation to appreciate the real wonder of the pyramids, not as a mystery built by aliens, but as a monumental achievement of real human beings. So, we come to the final, eternal question. Why do the pyramids still captivate us? We've explored the how, the who, and the what. But the why is perhaps the deepest mystery of all. Why do these ancient structures, built by a long-vanished civilization, still hold such power over our imagination? Perhaps it's because they represent a fundamental human desire, the drive to create something that will outlast our own brief lives. They connect us across the vast expanse of time, allowing us to touch the same stones that ancient hands shaped. In an age of digital noise, they inspire genuine awe with their sheer scale and simplicity. And they remind us of what humanity is capable of. If ancient people with simple tools could build mountains of stone, what could we accomplish today if we worked together with the same focus and ambition? The pyramids are more than just tombs. They are a testament to human potential. They show us what we can achieve when we dare to think impossibly large and then work together to make the impossible real. Now we're going to explore the Great Sphinx, the mysterious guardian that watches over the Giza Plateau. Carved from a single massive limestone outcrop, the Sphinx has the body of a lion and the head of a human, probably representing Pharaoh Khafre. It's about 240 feet long and 66 feet high, making it one of the largest monolithic statues in the world. Instead of moving giant stones, workers simply carved away the bedrock around a central piece, shaping what remained into the Sphinx. The face once had a nose which has long been missing. The popular story about Napoleon's troops using it for target practice is a myth. Drawings from centuries before Napoleon show the nose was already gone. It was more likely damaged by religious iconoclasm or simply eroded over thousands of years. The Sphinx also had a beard and was likely painted in bright, realistic colors. Imagine seeing it as the ancient Egyptians did, vibrant, complete, and staring eternally toward the rising sun. Let's dive into the mysteries of when and how the Sphinx was created. Most Egyptologists believe it was built around 2500 BC, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, whose face it's thought to represent. However, some researchers suggest it could be much older. They point to water erosion patterns on the enclosure walls, arguing they could only have been caused by rainfall from a much wetter climate thousands of years earlier. Mainstream geologists, though, believe the erosion is consistent with wind, occasional rain, and chemical weathering over the accepted time frame. The construction itself was a marvel. Workers carved away the surrounding limestone, gradually revealing the Sphinx's form. The softer limestone of the body has eroded more than the harder stone of the head, which is why the head looks a bit small for its body today. Directly in front of the Sphinx sits the Sphinx Temple, and nearby is the Valley Temple of Khafra. These structures were crucial parts of the pyramid complex, serving religious and ceremonial roles. The Valley Temple, one of the best preserved Old Kingdom temples, was likely a place for mummification and purification rituals before the pharaoh's burial. The Sphinx Temple has a similar design, suggesting they were built together. Both feature large, open-air courtyards surrounded by massive columns and walls. A causeway connected the Valley Temple to the pyramid's mortuary temple, creating a ritual pathway. During the Nile's flood season, funeral processions would arrive by boat, enter the Valley Temple for initial rites, and then be carried up the causeway for final ceremonies before entombment. This entire complex formed an integrated architectural and religious machine designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey to the afterlife. Now let's look at the smaller pyramids surrounding the Great Pyramid. On its east side stand three small pyramids, often called the Queen's Pyramids, although we're not certain who was buried in them. They are much smaller than the main pyramid, but were built with similar precision and techniques, likely for queens or other royal family members. Their existence shows that the incredible organization required for pyramid construction could be scaled to build multiple pyramids at once. These subsidiary pyramids even had their own tiny mortuary temples, creating a nested hierarchy of monuments. The Giza Plateau wasn't just three isolated pyramids. It was a carefully planned necropolis, a city of the dead. Multiple generations of pharaohs built here, each adding to the growing complex, making it an architecturally impressive and spiritually significant site. In 1954, archaeologists made a fascinating discovery near the Great Pyramid: sealed pits containing full-sized boats. One pit held a completely disassembled vessel made of 1,224 pieces of cedar wood. When reconstructed, it formed a stunning 143-foot-long boat, held together with ropes and intricate joints, no nails at all. Why was it buried? It likely carried Khufu's body across the Nile during his funeral procession. Afterwards, it was taken apart and buried for the pharaoh's use in the afterlife, where ancient Egyptians believed a boat was needed to travel through the underworld. Other boat pits have been found, with at least one more confirmed to contain a boat, though it remains sealed for preservation. These boats tell us so much about ancient shipbuilding, trade routes, and the incredible wealth devoted to royal burials. Let's shift our focus to the people who built these incredible monuments. Archaeologists have discovered cemeteries near the pyramids containing the tombs of the workers and administrators. These aren't simple graves. They are proper burials with goods, inscriptions, and decent architecture. This is crucial evidence that the workers were not slaves. Slaves wouldn't have been buried with such honor near the monuments they were forced to build. Some tombs even have inscriptions with names and job titles, like overseer of the side of the pyramid, showing a clear organizational structure. The quality of the tombs varies, reflecting different social ranks, from high-level administrators to ordinary laborers. The skeletal remains tell us about their health, diet, and even the medical care they received. These cemeteries prove that the pyramid builders were respected members of society. Surrounding the pyramids are vast cemeteries filled with rectangular tombs called mastabas. These were for the officials, priests, and nobles who served the pharaohs. Laid out in organized rows like streets and districts, these fields show that being buried near the pyramid was a high honor, believed to grant spiritual protection from the pharaoh's divine power. Many mastabas contain beautifully decorated chambers with carvings and paintings depicting daily life, religious scenes, and the deceased's accomplishments. They offer an invaluable window into Old Kingdom society. These chapels often feature false doors, symbolic passages that allowed the deceased's spirit to receive offerings from family members. For centuries, these fields grew, becoming impressive monuments in their own right, full of art and history. It's important to understand that the Great Pyramid never stood alone. It was the centerpiece of a huge, integrated funerary complex. This system included the pyramid itself, a mortuary temple for daily offerings to sustain the pharaoh's spirit, and a long causeway connecting it to a valley temple near the Nile. The valley temple was where mummification and initial rituals took place. The complex also featured subsidiary pyramids for family, boat pits for the afterlife journey, and the mastaba fields for officials. Funeral processions would move through this entire system, from the river to the final entombment. After the burial, priests maintained the pharaoh's cult for centuries, making the complex a permanent religious and economic institution. This helps explain why such enormous resources were devoted to it. It wasn't just a tomb, but the center of an eternal institution. While we focused on Khufu's Great Pyramid, the pyramids of his successors, Khafre and Menkaure, are fascinating in their own right. Khafre's pyramid often looks taller because it's on higher ground, but it's actually slightly smaller than the Great Pyramid. Its internal structure is simpler, perhaps reflecting lessons learned in design. Menkaure's pyramid is much smaller, only about 213 feet tall, but it features massive granite blocks on its lower levels, which would have been incredibly difficult to move. Together, the three pyramids show an evolution in construction. Khufu's pyramid represents the peak of size and ambition. Khafre's is nearly as large but simpler, and Menkaure's is smaller but innovative. After the Fourth Dynasty, pyramids never again reached this scale, making the Giza pyramids the absolute pinnacle of this ancient craft. In 1979, UNESCO designated the Giza Pyramid Complex a World Heritage Site, recognizing its outstanding value to all of humanity. This honor brings a responsibility to preserve these treasures for the entire world. The designation helps coordinate preservation strategies, provides technical expertise, and sets standards for site management, like restricting nearby development and ensuring tourism is sustainable. While tourism brings economic benefits, it also creates challenges like wear and tear on the monuments. The Egyptian government works to balance access with preservation, allowing people to experience the wonder of Giza while protecting it for the future. These monuments have survived for 4,500 years. With continued care, they will stand for thousands more, inspiring wonder for generations to come. Ever wondered what happened after the marvels of Giza? Why did Egypt's pyramids shrink in size and quality? The story of the later pyramids is a fascinating tale of change. After the Fourth Dynasty's peak, the pharaohs of the Fifth and Sixth Dynasties kept building, but on a much smaller scale. These pyramids were less precise, used inferior materials like rubble cores, and many now look more like hills than grand structures. Why the decline? It could be a mix of things. Maybe the treasury was drained after Giza's massive expense. Perhaps later pharaohs didn't have the same absolute power. Or maybe religious beliefs evolved, and giant tombs were no longer seen as essential. It's even possible the incredible engineering knowledge of the Giza builders was lost over time. But these later pyramids weren't without their own genius. They introduced something incredible: the pyramid texts, religious spells carved right into the tomb walls, giving us a direct window into ancient Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife. Let's look closer at one of the most significant discoveries in all of Egyptology, the pyramid texts. Starting with the Pyramid of Unas, the last pharaoh of the Fifth Dynasty, tomb walls came alive with columns of hieroglyphs. These weren't just decorations. They were magical spells and prayers designed to guide the pharaoh through the dangers of the afterlife and ensure his eternal life among the gods. There are over 700 known spells, covering everything from resurrection to joining the sun, god Ra. Imagine workers meticulously carving these sacred words into the stone, sometimes filling them with vibrant blue pigment. These texts weren't meant for the living. They were for the soul of the king, activated by their mere presence in the tomb. This incredible literary tradition didn't end here. It evolved into the coffin texts and later the famous Book of the Dead. For us, they are a priceless treasure. The actual 4,400-year-old religious beliefs of the ancient Egyptians, preserved in stone. Fast forward a few centuries to the Middle Kingdom, and we see a brief final revival of pyramid building. But these were very different from their Old Kingdom ancestors. Built between 2000 and 1800 BC, many used a core of mud brick, covered by a limestone casing. This was faster and cheaper, but not built to last. Once the outer casing stones were taken, the mud brick core simply eroded away. Today, many are just low mounds of rubble. They also changed the construction method, using internal stone walls to create compartments that were then filled with mud brick or sand. But they did innovate in other ways. To outsmart tomb robbers, they designed incredibly complex internal passages. The Pyramid of Amenemhat III at Hawara was so confusing it was nicknamed the Labyrinth by the ancient Greeks. Still, this was the last gasp. After the Middle Kingdom, pharaohs abandoned pyramids for hidden rock-cut tombs, like those in the famous Valley of the Kings. The age of pyramids in Egypt was over, so why did a tradition that lasted nearly 1,000 years just stop? The biggest reason was security. A pyramid is a giant billboard advertising a tomb full of treasure. Despite all their tricks, every single one was robbed in antiquity. Hiding tombs in remote secret valleys just made more sense. Cost was another huge factor. Pyramids were incredibly expensive. As Egypt's political landscape shifted, pharaohs might not have had the resources or absolute authority for such colossal projects. Religious beliefs also evolved. The New Kingdom pharaohs had different ideas about the afterlife journey that didn't require a massive pyramid. And let's be honest, the specialized knowledge was likely lost. After generations without building on a Giza-like scale, the engineering genius simply faded. But this doesn't mean Egypt was in decline. The New Kingdom was a time of immense power and expansion. It was simply a change in priorities, a practical solution to the age-old problem of grave robbing. But the story of pyramids doesn't end in Egypt. Let's travel south to modern-day Sudan, to the ancient kingdom of Kush. Centuries after the Egyptians stopped, Kushite kings and queens revived the practice, building over 200 pyramids for their rulers. These Nubian pyramids, built between 800 BC and 300 AD, are unique. They are much smaller and dramatically steeper than their Egyptian cousins, with angles of 70 degrees or more. This gives them a sharp, pointed look. Their construction was also different. The burial chambers weren't inside the pyramid itself, but underground, beneath it. The Kushites had a long, complex relationship with Egypt, sometimes ruled by them, and at one point even ruling Egypt themselves as the 25th dynasty. They adopted the pyramid as a powerful symbol of royalty and divinity, but adapted it to their own tastes. The Nubian pyramids are a fantastic example of how powerful ideas travel and transform across cultures. Now let's jump across the Atlantic to Mesoamerica, where civilizations in Mexico and Central America built their own pyramids completely independently. These structures, like the Great Pyramids of the Maya and Aztecs, look similar but had a totally different purpose. They weren't tombs, they were massive platforms for temples. The pyramid's job was to lift the temple closer to the heavens, creating a dramatic stage for religious ceremonies. They are also stepped, with large staircases leading to the top, unlike the smooth-sided Egyptian pyramids. While some do contain royal burials, that wasn't their main function. Often a new ruler would build a bigger pyramid right on top of an old one, creating layers of history. This incredible convergence shows us that the pyramid is a universal form. Separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, different cultures both arrived at the pyramid as the ultimate form of monumental architecture, proving its timeless global appeal. When we compare these three great pyramid traditions, Egyptian, Nubian, and Mesoamerican, the differences are as revealing as the similarities. Their function was completely different. Egyptian and Nubian pyramids were tombs, while Mesoamerican ones were temple platforms. Construction varied too, from the massive, precise blocks of Giza to the rubble-filled, plastered pyramids of the Americas. But what they all share is the human drive to build something monumental. In Egypt, pyramids were resurrection machines for pharaohs. In Mesoamerica, they were sacred mountains connecting the earth and the heavens. The pyramids of Giza represent the absolute peak of scale and precision, a feat never matched. But the impulse to build these shapes is universal. It seems that whenever a society has the means and the desire to build big, the pyramid form emerges. It tells us something profound about how we, as humans, see the world. And the pyramid is not just an ancient form. Modern architects are still captivated by its power. Just look at the Louvre Pyramid in Paris. Designed by I.M. Pei, this stunning glass and metal structure serves as a modern entrance, flooding the underground museum with light while honoring a timeless shape. Or think of the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas, a 30-story black glass pyramid that uses ancient symbolism for purely commercial entertainment. These modern buildings serve functions the ancients never dreamed of: museums, hotels, sports arenas. But they all tap into the pyramid's inherent stability and symbolic power. It's a shape that is structurally efficient and visually striking. The ancient builders would likely recognize the form, even if the materials are now steel and glass instead of stone. It proves that the essential geometry they pioneered 4,500 years ago is still powerful and relevant today. So, what is the ultimate legacy of the pyramids? It's more than just the physical structures. It's the legacy of human ambition, the desire to build something permanent, something that transcends our own fleeting lives. This ambition didn't die out, it just changed form. Think of the great medieval cathedrals, modern skyscrapers pushing ever higher, or massive projects like the space program. These are our pyramids. The motivation is timeless. We build to make a statement about our power, our skill, and our determination to leave a mark on the world. The pyramid builders would understand the drive to build the world's tallest building or to reach for the moon. The scale and methods may change, but the fundamental human need to build monuments, to inspire awe, and to create for eternity remains the same. The pyramids are simply the purest and earliest expression of this enduring human trait. So as we close this chapter, we acknowledge the end of an era. For 1,000 years, the pyramid was the ultimate royal tomb in Egypt. It was an age of incredible innovation that peaked at Giza and then slowly faded. After the Middle Kingdom, pharaohs sought security in hidden tombs, and the Pyramid Age was officially over. But the pyramids themselves remained. They stood as silent witnesses to the rise and fall of empires, becoming ancient even to the later Egyptians themselves. The end of their construction doesn't diminish the achievement. For a millennium, they built monuments that are still among humanity's greatest accomplishments. The Pyramid Age ended, but the pyramids endure, continuing to teach us about human ambition and our ability to achieve the impossible. In a way, the builders succeeded. They really did build for eternity. Now we're going to explore how modern archaeology transformed our understanding of the pyramids. For centuries, the pyramids were known, but not scientifically studied. They were tourist attractions for ancient Greeks and Romans, and mysteries that spawned wild speculation. Serious investigation began relatively recently. Napoleon's expedition to Egypt in 1798 included scholars who documented the monuments systematically. Their work, the Description de l'Égypte, sparked a European fascination with ancient Egypt. The decipherment of hieroglyphics by Jean-François Champollion in 1822 was revolutionary. Suddenly, ancient Egyptian texts could be read, and history written by the Egyptians themselves became accessible. But in the early 19th century, explorers like Giovanni Belzoni opened pyramids and tombs with crude methods, often damaging sites in their hunt for treasure. Scientific archaeology developed in the late 19th century, when Flinders Petrie brought precise measurement and systematic methodology, transforming archaeology from a treasure hunt into a rigorous science. Let's look at the modern excavation techniques used at pyramid sites. Contemporary archaeology is meticulous and systematic, a far cry from early explorations. Before any digging begins, sites are thoroughly surveyed and documented. Excavation proceeds slowly, removing soil layer by layer, documenting everything. This preserves chronological information and context. Every artifact's exact location is recorded because knowing where it was found is often more important than the object itself. Soil is sifted through fine mesh screens to catch tiny artifacts like beads, seeds, or bone fragments. Fragile artifacts get immediate attention from on-site conservators. Exhaustive documentation with photos, drawings, and digital tools like 3D scanning creates a permanent record. Because excavation is destructive, archaeologists only dig what's necessary, leaving portions undisturbed for future researchers with even better methods. Now for the exciting part, technologies that let us see underground without digging. Remote sensing reveals hidden structures while leaving them safely buried. Ground-penetrating radar sends electromagnetic pulses into the earth, creating underground maps that show buried walls or chambers. Magnetometry measures tiny variations in the Earth's magnetic field caused by buried features like stone structures or pottery. Electrical resistivity measures how easily electricity passes through the soil, mapping underground structures based on how they conduct differently from the surrounding Earth. And then there's LiDAR, which uses laser beams from aircraft to create incredibly precise elevation maps, revealing subtle ground features and even discovering pyramids hidden under jungle growth. These non-destructive technologies are game changers, guiding archaeologists to the most promising spots for excavation. So, how do we know how old everything is? Archaeology relies on accurate dating. Radiocarbon dating is a key method. It measures the decay of carbon-14 in organic materials like wood, charcoal, or bone. By measuring how much carbon-14 remains, scientists can determine when the organism died. Multiple radiocarbon dates from Giza consistently place the pyramids around 2500 BC. Then there's thermoluminescence, which can date pottery by measuring trapped electrons released when it was fired. We also use historical dating, which pieces together king lists and royal inscriptions to establish a timeline. By combining these different methods, archaeologists create robust chronologies, cross-checking one result against another to build a confident picture of the past. What can bones tell us? Physical anthropologists study skeletal remains from pyramid-era burials to extract remarkable information. They can determine age at death from bone development and gender from the pelvis and skull. Height can be estimated from long bones. Health markers reveal diseases and nutritional deficiencies, while heavy tooth wear might point to a coarse diet with sand in the bread. Marks on bones can show evidence of trauma, like healed fractures from past injuries. Arthritis patterns can even suggest the types of activities people regularly performed, like heavy lifting. Isotope analysis of bone chemistry reveals diet, whether someone ate mostly fish, meat, or grain. DNA analysis, though challenging with ancient samples, is revealing genetic relationships and ancestral origins. Let's talk about the materials themselves. Modern science can determine precisely where the pyramid stones came from. Petrographic analysis examines thin slices of stone under a microscope to reveal their unique mineral composition, matching them to specific quarries. Geochemical analysis measures trace elements, providing another way to confirm a stone's origin. We can also study the tool marks left on stone surfaces to figure out exactly what tools were used, like copper chisels versus iron ones. Even the mortar is analyzed to reveal its chemical recipe. By combining all these lines of evidence, researchers can reconstruct how construction proceeded and how builders adapted their methods over time, turning simple observation into precise science. Next up is digital documentation. Advanced technologies are creating complete digital records of the pyramids. 3D laser scanning builds incredibly detailed three-dimensional models with millimeter accuracy. You can see every block, every crack, every erosion pattern. Photogrammetry does something similar using thousands of overlapping photos. These models can be measured and analyzed to track deterioration over time. Gigapixel photography creates ultra-high-resolution images that let you zoom in on tiny details invisible to the naked eye. All this data, photos, notes, and scans, is compiled into digital archives accessible to researchers worldwide. This digital preservation ensures that even if the physical monuments were ever damaged, a detailed record would survive for future generations. It's one thing to theorize, but it's another to actually try it. That's experimental archaeology. Researchers replicate ancient techniques to understand how they really worked. They've cut limestone with copper chisels and sand to confirm it's possible and to estimate labor time. Teams have pulled multi-ton stones on sledges, discovering that wetting the sand dramatically reduces friction. They've recreated ancient copper tools, built small-scale pyramids, and even reconstructed ancient boats to test their seaworthiness. These practical experiments provide real-world data that theory alone can't. They reveal unforeseen problems and clever solutions, bridging the gap between what we think ancient people could do and what we know they accomplished. Pyramid research today is a global collaborative effort. Researchers from dozens of countries and multiple disciplines work together, coordinated by Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. International missions bring specialized expertise. One team might excel in architectural analysis, another in engineering or conservation. These multidisciplinary teams include archaeologists, historians, geologists, physicists, and more. Data is shared openly through publications and conferences, allowing the entire archaeological community to review findings and build upon each other's work. The old model of foreign teams taking artifacts has been replaced by an ethical approach that emphasizes collaboration, preservation, and respect for Egypt's cultural heritage. Finally, what does the future hold? New technologies promise even more discoveries. Advanced robotics might soon explore spaces too small or dangerous for humans, like the mysterious void found in the Great Pyramid. AI could analyze massive data sets to find patterns that humans have missed. Genetic analysis will continue to improve, revealing more about the workers' origins and health. New excavations will undoubtedly uncover more workers' villages or administrative buildings. The pyramids are among the most studied sites in the world, yet they continue to yield new secrets. Future discoveries will surely surprise us, challenging our current understanding and proving that there is always more to learn. How have the pyramids been seen through history? Let's start with ancient Greek and Roman visitors. By the time the Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt around 450 BC, the pyramids were already 2,000 years old. They were as ancient to him as he is to us. Herodotus wrote down stories about how they were built, including the famous tale of 100,000 men working for 20 years. While some of his information was second-hand, his writings preserved valuable details. The Greeks were so impressed they named the Great Pyramid one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and it's the only one still standing. Later, Roman travelers like Pliny the Elder marveled at them, and some even carved graffiti on the stones, just like modern tourists. These classical accounts kept the memory of the pyramids alive in Europe for centuries, setting the stage for their modern rediscovery. During the Middle Ages, very few Europeans traveled to Egypt. Knowledge of the pyramids came mostly from ancient texts, and some wild theories emerged. One popular belief was that they were Joseph's granaries from the Bible, built to store grain. This was completely wrong, of course, but it shows how people tried to fit ancient wonders into their own worldview. Then came the Renaissance, which sparked a new fascination with all things classical, including the pyramids. A few daring travelers brought back first-hand accounts, and the invention of printing helped spread their stories. Still, illustrations were often pure fantasy, drawn by artists who had never seen the real thing. It wasn't until Napoleon's expedition in the late 18th century that accurate, detailed information finally reached Europe, kicking off the Egyptomania that we still see today. Egyptomania is the name for the intense fascination with ancient Egypt that swept through Europe and America in the 19th century. After Napoleon's team published detailed illustrations, Egyptian style became all the rage. Wealthy Europeans built homes with Egyptian motifs. Then, in 1822, hieroglyphics were deciphered. Suddenly, ancient Egypt wasn't just a land of mysterious ruins, it was a civilization with a history that could be read. This only deepened the obsession. Obelisks popped up in major cities, and cemeteries were filled with pyramid-shaped tombs. The climax came in 1922 with the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. The world went crazy for King Tut, and Egyptian designs influenced everything from fashion and jewelry to Art Deco architecture. This fascination reflects both a genuine appreciation for ancient Egypt and a captivation with a culture seen as exotic and mysterious. The pyramids have also been a towering presence in literature for centuries. Ancient writers like Herodotus established them in the Western tradition from the very beginning. Even Shakespeare mentioned them as symbols of permanence. Romantic poets like Shelley were inspired by the idea of ancient monuments outlasting mighty empires. But it was 19th century adventure novels that really cemented the pyramids' image in popular culture. Tales of treasure hunters, ancient curses, and reawakened mummies. Science fiction writers imagined them as alien artifacts or super advanced technology. And of course, modern mystery and thriller novels often use them as a backdrop for solving ancient puzzles and racing against villains. From historical texts to children's books, the pyramids' rich symbolism makes them a powerful literary device. Film and television, being visual mediums, absolutely love the pyramids. They are instantly recognizable, visually stunning, and packed with a sense of adventure. From the silent film era to Hollywood's golden age, lavish epics like The Ten Commandments brought ancient Egypt to the masses. Then came the mummy movies, starting in the 1930s, which created the classic tropes of cursed tombs and archaeologists in peril. Action-adventure films like the Indiana Jones series blended archaeology with high-stakes fantasy, making us all want to be globe-trotting adventurers. And who could forget science fiction like Stargate, which built a whole universe around the idea of pyramids as alien gateways? Whether in serious documentaries or fun fictional TV shows, the pyramids always provide a dramatic and unforgettable setting. For centuries, artists have been captivated by the pyramids. In ancient Egypt itself, art depicted them in religious scenes, showing the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. During the Middle Ages, European art sometimes showed them as Joseph's granaries, based on that old misconception. As travel became easier, 18th and 19th century painters began creating more accurate and detailed works, which are now valuable historical records. Romantic artists focused on their mysterious and dramatic qualities, painting them against atmospheric landscapes. Modern and contemporary artists use the pyramid strong geometric shape for everything from abstract explorations to conceptual pieces. And since its invention, photography has given us an invaluable record, from early 19th century images to stunning modern drone shots, all capturing the timeless beauty of these incredible structures. The pyramids have even found their way into music. While it's less common than in visual art, they've inspired composers across genres. In the 1920s, the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb led to a wave of Egypt-themed classical pieces. Verdi's famous opera Aida helped establish ancient Egypt as a powerful setting in classical music. In popular music, rock bands like the Alan Parsons Project have used pyramid imagery on album covers and in lyrics. Hip-hop artists have referenced them as symbols of ancient African achievement, reclaiming a vital piece of heritage. New Age music sometimes explores so-called pyramid harmonics, and of course, movie scores use dramatic themes to heighten the experience of seeing pyramids on screen. Their recurring appearance in music shows just how deep their cultural resonance goes. Today, pyramids are all over video games, letting us explore ancient Egypt in ways we never could before. In puzzle games, we navigate mazes and solve ancient riddles inside virtual pyramids. In adventure games like the Assassin's Creed series, we get to explore stunningly realistic recreations of these ancient sites. Strategy games like Civilization let us build our own pyramids, giving us a small taste of the immense challenge it was. There are even educational games and immersive virtual reality experiences that let you walk through pyramid chambers and feel their incredible scale. For many younger people, video games are their first introduction to the pyramids, sparking a genuine interest in history and archaeology that can last a lifetime. Because they are so recognizable, pyramids are a powerful tool in advertising and branding. Companies use the pyramid shape to suggest durability, permanence, and ancient wisdom. Think about it. If you want your product to seem timeless, what better symbol is there? Egypt's tourism industry, of course, puts the pyramids front and center in all its marketing. You'll also see the pyramid shape used in corporate logos and diagrams, like the classic food pyramid, to show hierarchy or progression. Luxury brands use Egyptian motifs to suggest exclusivity and prestige. The commercial use of the pyramids shows just how deeply they've entered our modern consciousness. They've become a universal shorthand for antiquity, mystery, and greatness. Ultimately, the pyramids have become a universal cultural touchstone. Few monuments are recognized by so many people across the globe. They've appeared in so much art, literature, and film that they feel familiar even to those who've never studied Egyptian history. To Egyptians, they are a proud symbol of national heritage. To many in the African diaspora, they are powerful evidence of ancient African achievement. To the world, they represent the incredible heights of human ambition and ingenuity. They are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, belonging not just to Egypt, but to all of humanity. In a connected world, the pyramids remind us of our shared human story and our species' remarkable capacity to create wonders that stand the test of time. Industrialization and urbanization have brought new environmental dangers. The air pollution from Cairo's sprawling metropolis and constant traffic is slowly eating away at the stone. Pollutants like sulfur dioxide mix with the limestone, causing chemical weathering that makes the surfaces pitted and crumbly, a process much faster than natural erosion. Below ground, rising water tables from modern irrigation and city water use threaten the very foundations. This moisture seeps into the bedrock, destabilizing the pyramids and causing salt to crystallize within the stones, making them crumble from the inside out. Even the daily swing from hot desert days to cool nights creates thermal stress, causing the stones to expand and contract, leading to cracks and flaking over time. Climate change is only expected to make these temperature extremes worse. While we can't stop the weather, conservationists are working tirelessly to slow this deterioration and mitigate the worst impacts. Now let's talk about a double-edged sword: tourism. It brings in vital revenue that supports preservation, but the sheer volume of visitors also takes a toll. Every touch transfers oils and acids from human skin, staining and degrading the ancient stones. Multiply that by millions, and you see a visible darkening in some areas. Foot traffic wears down pathways and steps, polishing the stone smooth until it erodes away. Inside the pyramid's tight chambers, every breath we exhale releases moisture and carbon dioxide. This raises humidity, encouraging the growth of damaging bacteria and fungi, and creates a weak acid that can dissolve the very limestone of the walls. To manage this, authorities are limiting visitor numbers, creating protective walkways and barriers, and even closing some areas entirely. It's a delicate balance between letting the world experience these monuments and ensuring they restill here for the next generation to experience. Imagine this: when the pyramids were built, they stood alone in the vast, open desert. Today, the megacity of Cairo, with over 20 million people, has grown to surround the Giza Plateau completely. This urban encroachment brings a host of problems. The pressure to build new homes, businesses, and roads on the valuable land right next to the pyramids is immense, constantly threatening the protective buffer zones. This growth also brings more pollution, and the need for new infrastructure like sewers and power lines risks damaging undiscovered underground remains. Visually, the modern city intrudes on the majestic isolation the pyramids were meant to have. Protecting them now also means protecting the space around them, a constant political and economic battle to balance the needs of a growing population with the preservation of ancient heritage. So, how do we know what's really happening to these colossal structures? Through constant high-tech monitoring. Modern conservation isn't guesswork, it's a science. Sensors inside the chambers track temperature, humidity, and air quality, revealing how visitor presence or changing seasons affect the delicate interior. Laser scanners create incredibly detailed 3D models, which, when compared year after year, can show exactly where erosion is happening and how fast. Vibration sensors listen for ground movement from earthquakes or nearby construction. Tiny monitors are even placed across cracks to see if they are stable or growing. All this data gives conservators an early warning system, allowing them to intervene precisely when and where it's needed, saving these ancient wonders before small problems become catastrophic. When that monitoring reveals a problem, it's time for the conservators to get to work. This is where art and science meet. For stone that's crumbling, they might apply a special liquid chemical called a consolidant that soaks in and hardens, stabilizing the surface. For surfaces darkened by pollution or covered in biological growth, They use specialized cleaning techniques, from gentle chemicals to high-tech lasers. Cracks are carefully filled with custom mortars that match the original material, preventing water from getting in. They also improve drainage systems to channel water away from the foundations and constantly remove plants whose roots could pry the stones apart. Sometimes, the best action is simply putting up a barrier to prevent touching. Every intervention is a careful judgment call, balancing the risk of action against the risk of doing nothing. Preserving the pyramids is a monumental task, and Egypt doesn't have to face it alone. International cooperation plays a crucial role. UNESCO's World Heritage Program helps coordinate global efforts, bringing in technical advisors and raising awareness. Foreign archaeological missions often include conservation specialists who treat the monuments while they study them, sharing their expertise with their Egyptian colleagues. Organizations like the World Monuments Fund, as well as foreign governments and private foundations, provide grants for specific projects, offering vital financial support. This is a true collaboration. It respects Egypt's authority over its heritage, while bringing the world's best minds and resources together to protect these treasures for all of humanity. While we fight to save the physical pyramids, we're also preserving them digitally. This creates a permanent record that could survive even if the unthinkable happened. High-resolution photography and 3D laser scanning capture every inch of the pyramids, creating precise digital models that document their exact condition today. These models can be used for research, to track changes over time, and could even guide reconstruction if needed. Researchers are also creating virtual reality experiences that show how the pyramids looked in their prime, with their polished white casing and surrounding temples. This digital preservation creates a priceless archive, ensuring that the knowledge and wonder of the pyramids are safe forever and accessible to anyone, anywhere in the world. Ultimately, successful preservation isn't just about experts and technology. It's about people. The communities living in the shadow of the pyramids are the frontline guardians of this heritage. That's why community engagement is so important. Education programs teach local children about the value of the monuments, fostering a sense of pride and ownership. It's also crucial that the economic benefits of tourism flow back into these communities, creating jobs and improving local infrastructure. This gives people a real stake in protecting the sites. In some projects, local residents are even trained and employed in archaeological work. When communities are respected, consulted, and see a direct benefit, they become the strongest allies in the fight to preserve their own incredible history. Proper conservation is incredibly expensive. The costs are constant and massive, covering everything from high-tech monitoring systems and painstaking restoration work to security personnel and staff salaries. The Egyptian government has countless competing priorities like healthcare and education, so heritage preservation has to fight for its share of the budget. Revenue from tourism helps, but it can be unpredictable, fluctuating with global events. International donations are a huge help, but they aren't always a reliable long-term solution. When funding falls short, maintenance gets deferred, and small problems grow into bigger, more expensive emergencies. Finding sustainable long-term funding is one of the biggest challenges of all. It's a simple truth. Without adequate financial support, even the best conservation plans can't be put into action. So what does the future hold for the pyramids? The challenges are real, but they are not insurmountable. Technology is providing ever better tools to monitor and protect them. Global awareness and the commitment to preserving our shared heritage are stronger than ever. But new risks like climate change and the pressures of urban development are growing. The pyramids have proven their resilience over 4,500 years, but they are not invulnerable. Their continued survival depends on us. It depends on our choices, our commitment, and our willingness to invest in their protection. If we succeed, future generations, thousands of years from now, will be able to stand right where we are, feeling the same awe and connection to our deep past. That is the goal, to ensure these enduring symbols of human achievement stand for another 4,500 years and beyond. We've now reached the final chapter of our journey through the history, construction, and legacy of the pyramids. For the past 3 hours, we've explored every facet of these incredible monuments. We now understand their brilliant design, born from careful mathematical planning and precise surveying. We know how the stones were quarried with simple copper tools and tireless, skilled labor. We've followed their journey on sledges across wetted sand and on boats down the Nile. We've watched as they rose block by block over 2 decades of coordinated effort. We've met the workers, paid Egyptian citizens, not slaves, who took pride in building an eternal home for their pharaoh. We've navigated the inner passages and chambers, explored the myths and the facts, and traced their 4,500-year legacy. Now let's reflect on what it all means and why these ancient stones still speak to us today. If there's one lesson to take away from the pyramids, it's that ancient people were every bit as intelligent, creative, and capable as we are. They lacked our technology, but not our brain power. When we marvel at their engineering, we're really marveling at the power of the human mind to solve immense challenges. They didn't have computers, but they had observation, logic, and generations of accumulated knowledge. The sheer organizational scale is staggering. Managing tens of thousands of workers, coordinating vast supply chains, these are the same management skills prized in boardrooms today. The craftsmanship shows that with practice, simple tools in skilled hands can achieve breathtaking precision. And the determination, committing to a 20-year project, reminds us that the greatest achievements require patience and a vision that extends beyond a single lifetime. It's a humbling thought. We're not superior to our ancestors, just better equipped. The pyramids are the ultimate testament to the power of organized society. An individual human is limited, but thousands of individuals organized effectively towards a shared goal. They can build mountains of stone that last for millennia. This is the essence of civilization. It requires leadership to provide a vision, a hierarchy to create structure, communication to pass information, and specialization to develop expertise. The same elements are required to solve our challenges today. Whether it's climate change, disease, or poverty, the problems are different, but the solution is the same: organized collective effort. The pyramids are proof that when humanity works together, we can achieve the seemingly impossible. If people with Bronze Age tools could do that, what can we accomplish if we truly put our minds to it? In our modern world, so much is designed to be disposable. Products are meant to be replaced. Buildings last for decades, not centuries. The pyramids represent the complete opposite: building for eternity. What's the value in that? It creates a tangible link across generations, connecting us to a past 4,500 years away. It demands a commitment to quality, because if you're building forever, every detail matters. This multi-generational thinking is rare today, but so valuable. What if we built our cities to last centuries? What if we made things designed for repair, not replacement? The pyramids prove the power of permanence. They stand as a silent argument for balancing our short-term thinking with a longer, more enduring vision for the future. Few things connect the past, present, and future as powerfully as the pyramids. When you touch a stone, you're touching a surface shaped by an ancient worker. This direct physical connection makes history real. These weren't abstract figures in a book. They were real people who lived, worked, and left behind something that we can still experience. The pyramids remind us that we are part of a long, continuous story. They've witnessed just a fraction of humanity's journey, and they'll likely witness much more of our future. This perspective is vital. It reminds us that our problems are not unique, and our era is not the end of the story. They model a responsibility to the future, a gift from ancestors we never met, and inspire us to consider what we will leave for generations to come. While we've solved most of the pyramid mysteries, a few unknowns remain, and that's a good thing. Mysteries engage our curiosity. The void above the Grand Gallery, the exact function of certain shafts, these puzzles keep the pyramids alive, inviting investigation and sparking wonder. A world with no mysteries would be a far less interesting place. But we must distinguish between honest mystery and manufactured mystery. Honest mystery acknowledges what we don't know while respecting what we do. Manufactured mystery, like theories of aliens or lost civilizations, rejects clear evidence in favor of baseless speculation. It's not mystery, it's ignorance. The real mysteries are research opportunities that steadily advance our knowledge, ensuring the pyramids will continue to offer both answers and questions for generations to come. Humanity today faces enormous challenges that can feel overwhelming. But consider the pyramids. The ancient Egyptians faced what must have seemed an impossible task. They succeeded by breaking the impossible into manageable steps. You can't build a pyramid at once, but you can quarry one block today and move it tomorrow. Repeat that millions of times, and you've built a wonder of the world. Our modern challenges require the same approach, sustained effort over decades. The pyramids teach us that organization multiplies effectiveness, that long-term thinking achieves what short-term fixes can't, and that ambitious goals inspire extraordinary effort. They are a case study in accomplishing the impossible. When our problems seem insurmountable, we should remember what people with simple tools achieved 4,500 years ago and ask ourselves, what are we capable of? The pyramid builders gave us a precious gift, monuments that inspire, evidence of human potential, and a physical connection to our distant past. We owe them our gratitude. We should be grateful for their ambition, their commitment to quality, and the genius of their organization. We should honor their memory by preserving the legacy they left for us, and we should honor their achievement by telling the truth about it. Recognizing that real Egyptian people built the pyramids through skill and determination is the highest tribute we can pay them. The best way to honor their example is to attempt our own ambitious goals, creating our own legacy for the future. We are the current custodians of their gift, and we have a responsibility to pass it on. Ultimately, the pyramids force us to ask the eternal questions. Why do we create? What is our purpose? They reflect a universal human desire to build something that outlasts our own mortality, to leave a mark on the world. The builders created something for eternity, prompting us to consider what contributions we will make that might outlast us. They are the ultimate proof that with a clear vision and sustained effort, nothing is truly impossible. And so our 3-hour journey concludes. For 4,500 years, the pyramids have stood as silent witnesses to history, a timeless testament to human ambition, skill, and determination. We've seen that their construction was not the work of myths or magic, but of brilliant organization and the sustained effort of skilled Egyptian workers. They are a bridge across time, connecting us to our past and inspiring our future. They offer one eternal lesson. With the shared vision and the will to persevere, humanity can achieve anything. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this exploration, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the wonders of our world. See you next time.